Happy Wednesday night, everybody. Welcome to Club and Country here on the MLS YouTube channel. We're starting a new tradition, and that is we are watching all of the Canadian national team, all of the men's national team qualifiers, though that's about to end, friendlies leading up to the World Cup, and the World Cup, we assume, knock on wood, for the rest of this year. It's going to be a massive year in international soccer. We are almost there. These are the final World Cup qualifiers to go. Canada are in. They're going to Panama with pot 3 on the line. If they win this game in Panama, who are now eliminated out of it after their past two windows kind of went downhill, Canada will be in pot 3, pot C, for the World Cup. That is absolutely massive. The U.S. and Mexico, not yet guaranteed spots in Qatar, but they're very, very close. The U.S. 6 goals ahead on goal differential. Costa Rica, who are hosting the Americans tonight in San Jose at the National Stadium, would have to win by 6 goals or more. They've scored 10 through 13 games in these qualifiers. It's probably not going to happen, but we're here to witness whatever does happen. I'm here with Sacha Kljestan, LA Galaxy midfielder, U.S. national team veteran, assist man, assist king from back in the day with the Red Bulls. It's not that long ago. I don't know how to throw you to the bus like that, Sash. Matt Doyle, Calen Carr. Should be a fun night. Hit us up in the comment section. I'm watching right now. Armchair analyst Ottoman is already in the comment section, Matt, so fear not. You have a fan base going. What's up, guys? How you feel? We'll start with you, Sasha. I know we pulled you over from Fox. We got your ITC. We transferred you over. We don't have chicken wings, but we should have, I don't know, better conversation maybe. What's up, man? How do you feel on this night? U.S. is almost there / there. I don't want to jinx it, but it feels comfortable, unlike the last time around.
Yeah, the U.S. is there. I'm excited to watch them play tonight. I like their lineup. I like that they're going for it. I think we're actually going to win tonight. Very excited to watch the game.
Calen, Doyle, how you guys feeling? Similar confidence? I don't have any butterflies. I feel good. I feel like we've just sort of, we've kept the champagne cork in, but we're ready to pop it off. We're like almost there, just for the hit halftime, not down a goal, get a lead, and the party's about to start.
No, I feel great. I mean, I think like the point at the Azteca and then, the incredible first half against Panama made it so you could like sleep the last couple nights, right? Like at least I was able to like go to bed, get some actual sleep and not have to worry too much about like just something, I mean, this would be beyond bizarre. But as opposed to like, a banger from 35 where you start to get nervous and really sweat and like, I'm hoping for none of that tonight. So I would say after what we've gone through in the past, it's sort of like prudent to be cautious and come through. But I feel confident as well that I think the team is going to not rest on their laurels and think I probably push and see if they can get another win tonight.
Doyle, we will not ford any artificial rivers at a stadium. There will be no 35-yard bangers that sink. I hope, knock on wood again, that sink our chances here. You got what they wanted for the first 2 games for Greg Berhalter, and that's what got us here. Mm-hmm. But he's going with a very strong lineup, and we can show that to the folks at home here in a second. It's the same lineup from the Azteca. It is the exact same lineup. What do you think of that decision from Greg Berhalter?
I totally get why he's doing that, especially because, Pulisic in the form he's in, Tyler Adams playing the way he's played, the center back pairing has been ridiculous. So I get it. You want to end on a good note. You could have a chance to make history here, being the first U.S. team to win at Costa Rica, and do it in a qualifier, and like that. That's pretty good. I worry about injuries. Like all 4 of those guys that I'm thinking of, Pulisic, Adams, Walker, and Miles Robinson, like they've all missed time in the past year due to one muscle injury or another. So I'm hoping that Greg bears that in mind, and he's ready for a line change at the hour mark. And hopefully that comes with the U.S. having a lead in this game as well, and they can sort of cruise from there. But the hard work is done, between that point and Panama dropping points at home on game 1 and then the blowout in game 2. It was a very low probability thing that the U.S. would be sitting here feeling this much comfort about qualifying in game 3. I thought Greg took a complete risk with the team he played at the Azteca, but it paid off. And fortune favors the bold. So good for him.
What stands out, Sasha, from this team? And what stands out from what you saw in Azteca from this team?
Well, first thing is like the whole redemption of the few guys on the field tonight that actually played in Cuba. So DeAndre Yedlin, Christian Pulisic, and Kellen Acosta, I think all played that day. And so for those guys to be part of this like redeem team to get the team back into the World Cup, that they've become important players, that they're starting again tonight, I think is huge. Like Matt said, the center back pairing I think has been amazing when they've played together. They've only given up one goal, I think. So that's really like the spine of the team that's holding things down. I think they've been fantastic. Christian, I think, is still the difference maker. So I'm excited to see him going again. I just think the team is very strong. This is their strongest lineup that they have in camp right now, and that they're really going for it. And I love to see that.
Costa Rica, of course, has some yellow card problems. That's been well documented. They have 9 guys on a yellow card, including some absolutely massive starters.
Wiebe, I saw you smile at that redeem team.
I know, dude. I know. The soccer branding guy, and he was like, "Has anybody else said that, or did Sacha just casually drop that right here, right now?" Like that is a tagline you could actually see in the build up to Qatar. Like, I like that. I might start stealing that. I'll give you the copyright Sacha Kljestan every time I drop it, but. So of the 9 available players, as you see here on the screen, that are on a yellow card, only 1 is starting tonight. 5 are on the bench. Campbell's the big one. Doyle, I saw you tweet out that for karma's sake, you kind of hope that Joel Campbell pulls a yellow card, because we all remember that moment in San Jose last time around where Matt Besler phantom stomped him and he rolled around on the ground and got Besler sent off, and they lost that game, and that was the end of the Jurgen tenure. Martinez, Oviedo, Ruiz, Venegas.
That was, just to be clear, that was not the end of Jurgen's tenure.
Was it not?
We went over this on the previous stream with you. That was from the 2014 cycle. Jurgen's tenure was the 4-0 loss in Costa Rica at the start of the 2018 cycle.
Well, 10 losses in 12
sorry,
games.
man.
Sorry. I know, you're right. 10 losses in 12 games in
Had a
Costa
lot of
Rica.
disappointment
It all blurs together for me in San Jose, whether it's the Estadio Saprissa or the Nacional. And then 3 are not even in the squad: Borges, Calvo, and Fuller. Starting center back, starting central midfielder, and starting right back, not in the squad. I highly doubt we'll see Joel Campbell tonight. I think it would be silly for them to put him on, given the importance that he has to them. I mean, they don't create much, they don't score much outside of set pieces and Joel Campbell. So I could see Luis Fernando Suarez saying, not today for us. What do you think of the yellow card rule, Sacha? As a guy who's been in this qualifying format, it is insane to me that a guy like, for instance, Calvo, who got his yellow card in the second of 13 games they played, has to miss out on this game, because if he gets another yellow, he won't play in the all-important playoff we assume that they will be in against New Zealand.
Yeah, I think the yellow card rule needs an overhaul. I like it in the World Cup because it forces players, I think, to try to play the game more and not just do tactical fouls and things like that, because you risk suspension in your third group game or in the next round. In a competition that's this long, though, it's ridiculous. Like, to not get 2 yellow cards in this is the 14th game. I mean, and it's even different in Europe. In Europe, they're playing sometimes 10 games only. In South America, I think they've played 18 games total. So it's like, these things have to change depending on how many games you play. I think it's ridiculous. It sucks.
Yeah, I think MLS has a rule, or at least did, that where it was like, what is it, like 5 and 13 or something like that? So it's like,
yeah, I'd like to see good behavior
to scale. It just doesn't.
Yeah, you've got the good behavior rule in MLS too. I think it's every 5 games you go without one. Now one goes away. So yeah, I think that's a good rule that we have in our league, that hopefully they can adopt something like that.
Panama, of course, hosting Canada tonight. Mexico against El Salvador. There are some crazy scenarios that could go down here. We don't think they're going to go down, but I mentioned goal differential, and right now the U.S. with plus 13 is so far ahead of Costa Rica at plus 3 that it's hard to imagine this could be turned over. Again, Costa Rica scored 10 goals in 13 games. Even Luis Fernando Suarez said before this game, look, in the realm of possibility, we are not going to go out and score 6 goals. But here's if you're rooting for chaos tonight. If the U.S. lose 7, I don't even want to read that. Actually, just take that off. What am I doing? I didn't even know. Do the other tweet, Anders. Please take that off my screen. I don't want to see that particular scenario. I want to see the one. Yeah, okay, here we go. Mexico lost, Costa Rica win. Let's just say it's 1-0 or something like that. Costa Rica makes up 5 in goal differential. Okay, that couldn't happen. Mexico could get into the playoff, basically. But that is true chaos. We basically know what's going to happen, but we certainly know what's going to happen with Canada. I've gotten these 2 guys' take on Canada, Sacha. I want to know what you think about this rise from John Herdman's team, from not going to be in the Hex. They weren't there until COVID hit and things got changed. In the past, they haven't even gotten close. It's been 35 years. to sitting at the very top, utterly dominant, one loss through this whole thing. That doesn't happen out of nowhere, but this new generation has certainly made some memories that they will hold on to for a long time and probably build on in Qatar.
I love it, man. I love it a lot. I'm a fan of those guys. There's so many good young players on their team. There's a few guys that I've played with over the years, Canadian dudes that are on the team now that are making it up. The thing I love the most is after they qualified, I saw Osorio say, like, growing up, this was an impossibility. Like, it wasn't even a dream that we thought we could achieve making it to the World Cup, but it's like, now we're here, and it gave me goosebumps. I'm really proud of those guys. Like, I've played with Kamal Miller and Richie Larea and Tesho Akindele, who's been part of the team. He hasn't really been lately, but is pushing for a spot on Canada. And so many good young players, so fun to watch. It's no fluke when you look at how many goals they've scored in this qualifying round, how many wins they have, how well they've done on the road, not only at home. It's really a great story in soccer. The bummer for them is if they don't win tonight and they end up in pot 4, they're probably going to end up in the group of death at the World Cup.
They will make it the group of death, I think. That's the unfortunate thing for them. What did Orlando not see in Richie and Kamal?
I think they saw it in Kamal, but I think they just had other guys that were playing in front of him. Kamal's a late bloomer, but from his first training session, I could tell that he was a player. Richie, I think, just wasn't finding his position. He was always a midfielder in Orlando, and I think when he got to Toronto and Greg made him into an outside back, I think that really, things just blossomed for him. But, sometimes this happens to players. They're just not fancied by certain coaches, and they slip through the cracks a little bit. But those two guys are definite players and ones for the future.
I think back a little bit to like the rules that went against Canadian players at times too, as counting as like full internationals in MLS, and just like that just like never really made much sense. And so like there was always, feel like Canada's always had talent. Some of it has not decided to play for Canada in the past. And then there's been talent like a guy like Dero. You look back and you're like, this guy was like, my favorite MLS player ever. But I think like to see now the difference of just even like that. I mean, so many of these guys have come from, really unique backgrounds, whether they've come through, their families have immigrated to Canada or not. And then even guys that have grown up through this academy system that didn't exist before. It's really incredible to see. And yeah, the Osorio example definitely stood out to me because I remember talking to him before this was like 3 years ago when I went up to Canada, and we went to his hometown in Brampton, where a lot of these guys have come through. Is Kyle Aaron, Tejan, like a lot of guys have come through, Tiba Hutchinson, and it's this like hotbed. And he was talking about, I don't want to wait till 2026 when we host the World Cup. I want to we want to be the first one to qualify. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's nice, but also 2026 is there, right? Like,
yeah, sure thing.
And like they hadn't had success, right, in like going through to the qualification process at all. And then suddenly it was like I think it was revealing more of that mentality of the team. And when I've seen them go up against the US and against Canada, like they square off and are not afraid. And so, whether it's going to the World Cup, I think they'll bring that same mentality where they have players playing at top leagues, and even the guys that like maybe aren't at the top clubs like Alfonso or some of these other guys, like I don't think they'll be afraid of that. And I think it's a big opportunity too for them to get in the shop window and potentially make those big moves to bigger clubs. So, I mean, it's exciting. I hope they win tonight so they can avoid it. But I feel like this is a team that's going to go to go to Qatar with just like unencumbered by expectations or anything, and really like go after and maybe even surprise some teams.
Do you think Qatar lets the sword in? Have you seen the sword that they're carrying around here? I don't. This is like the exact thing that I love. Is a ridiculous story about John Herdman commissioning a sword from a company called, Winterborn Blades. I mean, have you guys? This is a real sword. He had a sword made. It has a Latin phrase that says "Fear nothing" on it. It got confiscated in Costa Rica. It's an actual like blade. The guy that made it said it's the greatest day of his life to make this sword, except the day his daughter was born. This is the quote from John Herdman. I just can't get over it. The sword is something that symbolizes new Canada. That's the swagger we want to play with, and it goes into every stadium to symbolize we'll own their ground. How would you have responded to this, Sacha and Calen?
I mean,
Like,
it's clearly it's working. I mean,
Yeah,
this
I
guy
mean-
he's got the whole team bought in, and they're like, the togetherness that you see of this Canadian team is awesome. Like, they just look like they're enjoying every moment together. The games that they play in Canada, they've really united, I feel like, the soccer community up there to believe in them even more too. Like, the crowds you've seen at this Tim Hortons field or whatever it is, it's like, it's amazing. Every goal they score, the place is popping off. Like, they've really made believers, I think, out of a lot of people. And you know, I'm just really proud of them, of what they've done for soccer in their country. And I agree with Calen that they go to Qatar and, you know, they don't really have pressure on them. Like, you know, I think they'll put some pressure on themselves because they're good players and they've done really well. But I think they could surprise a lot of people in Qatar. And they've been really the talk of the world soccer, I think, in the last couple of years. And I got to say, for me as the old guy, special shout out to Atiba Hutchinson for still going and still being an amazing leader. And what a player he's been for so many years. It's nice to see that he got to stick around and live this with the young guys, because there were old guys that came before. You know, Calen mentioned D-Row, who was a fantastic player, but his era just wasn't great with Canada. And so to see Atiba stick around with these guys is pretty awesome.
Atiba's not an MLSer.
You need some of those guys to be like, oh no, we're not waiting for 2026. Like, because I'm not gonna.
He was in their ear. He was like, guys, I know everybody wants to talk about 2026,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to make it there. Although I honestly would not bet against Atiba to make it a couple more years. You look at that lineup as we just saw on screen, Doyle, and you start to count off, you know, Crépeau, Johnston, Kamal Miller, Tejan, Richie. Cavallini now is in the league. Kyle Larin started in the league. Like, there's so much of, and I know that you hit people with a little bit of the Twitter troll on it, but there's so much.
I do not
Mark
troll.
Anthony K, true. Atakubi was a Vancouver Whitecap. It still saddens me that he didn't stick in MLS, and maybe he'll be back someday. He played so well in their last match against Jamaica. MLS has been a part of this. I know people get riled up when they hear the Commissioner Garber quotes about, hey, when we came to Canada, when we came to Toronto, we envisioned a moment like this. I don't think the commissioner's trying to take credit. I think he's just saying that this was part of the vision, and to see it pay off in this way is kind of a validation of all the time and investment and money that so many people in Canada put into this. Not just in MLS academies, but academies, Sigma, whatever it is, around the country. Like, this is an entire nation pulling in one direction. To see it pay off, that's admirable. That's what we want to see, and that's what we want MLS to be a part of, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the three Canadian clubs have sort of waxed and waned in their commitment to developing local players, but it's definitely been waxing over the past 4 or 5 years, and you're seeing the fruits of that with guys like Ishmael Kone getting onto the field tonight. Maxime Crépeau came from that Montreal Academy as well, and we all know about the type of guys that Vancouver's produced, and the next generation coming through Toronto too, and so they're building up that base, right? They're building up that baseline of talent, and then the other thing that's happened is for whatever reason, in the past 10 years, American colleges discovered that there's a ton of talent in Canada. And so that's how you end up with guys like Kyle Larin, who went to the University of Connecticut, should be said, and Tejan Buchanan, and a few Kamal Miller went to college. I think he went to Syracuse as well. So there's this dual pipeline, right? There's the optimal one, which is what you want, which is the guys who are developed locally, sign as pros at 15, 16 years old, play their way into the first team by the time they're 19 or 20 and become, really good pros. And then there is sort of a blossoming American college pipeline. And I know that there's a lot of, I understand why a large percentage of the fan base looks down on college soccer, because it's not the ideal way to develop. But we've seen it for 50 years in the U.S. that you can develop that way. Guys like Sacha and Calen, guys like Clint Dempsey and Eddie Pope, who's still the best defender that the U.S. has ever produced, all played college soccer. So it still matters. It's still a good path, and it's become a larger path for Canadian players over the past few years. For the guys who don't go straight into Toronto or Montreal or Vancouver. And so it's great. It feels it feels more sustainable in a way. And because you need numbers, man, you don't qualify with 11 guys. You qualify with 30. And Canada qualified and they used more than 30 guys. And, they won't have to go through that ringer in 2026. But I don't think that the conveyor belt of talent is going to slow down between now and then.
Yeah, a lot of Big East love going on right now. I'm shocked that you even said the S word. That you even say, like, where
the
did
S
they go?
word with Sacha here. The S word with Sacha here is Shaheen Holloway, I believe. That is the new S word. Look at him. Look at him.
There you go. There you go. Okay, we got about 10 minutes till game time. How about some wish lists for tonight? What do you guys want to see in your just like your mind's eye? Dream it up. What it would be an ideal
Goals.
night? What would make
Goals.
it the perfect...
Take it to him.
Yeah,
Smack
well,
him.
we didn't get any
front foot. Put him under pressure.
I look at it. I still think of the positions left on the pitch for the U.S. team. The 9 is still the big question mark, and Jesus Ferreira did a great job last game, and I think fits really well into the system. He can drop down, he can facilitate. I would like to see Pepe. I'm watching him tonight. I think it's a big opportunity for him to get back into the lineup, maybe in a match where it's different. It's just a different, I mean, it's not going to be easy going to Costa Rica at all, obviously, but like it just gives him a little bit of a different platform to play without the pressure necessarily of like every, I don't know. It's just going to be a little different than the Azteca match. And I'd like to see him just get his confidence back a little bit, which could maybe, I think sometimes, and Sacha could speak better to this, but like if you come into the national team, you get a goal here, it can bring you on to back into like club form. And then your club form can then bring you back to the national team. And so it's like, I just think this is a big opportunity for him. So I'm going to be focused more on Pepe and how he takes this opportunity to get back into the lineup tonight, because I thought that they might ride Ferreira again because he was doing well and scored a goal and had an assist. But I think I'm eager to see Pepe get back into it because I still think that number 9 position is still up for competition.
What about you, Sash? What do you want to see tonight from the U.S. or Canada or otherwise?
Not from the U.S. Is the main thing I'm thinking about. Another shutout with these two at the back. I think they've been so fantastic playing together. Another guy I'm really interested in seeing is Tim Weah. I think when the full team is there, I don't see him as a starter in the World Cup. I think Aronson or Gio Reyna or even both of them on the field at some point are starters. But I do think that Tim Weah is a good young player who has more to show, I think, than he has shown. So I'm excited to see him, and I want to see Gio Reyna when he comes off the bench too to continue to be a difference maker, because I do think that Gio is a big time player for the U.S. for the years to come.
Do you play Gio tonight? Given how much time he missed with that hamstring, given that he played 90 last weekend for Dortmund, he's just like, he hasn't played a ton the past 2 games, but like why that strikes me as a why risk it type of one, because he literally missed 6 months last time he did his hamstring. He misses 6 months now. We're talking like he's just got a couple of weeks to get healthy before it's time for the World Cup.
I think that's probably one of the hardest things for a coach to do, is to, because Gio is the type of guy, from what I've heard about him, that just wants to play and wants to be a part of things and is this like, tough kid who's super competitive. And I think the hardest thing as a coach is when the player is telling you, no, I feel good, I want to play. And he's obviously a fantastic player, is keeping him on the bench while trying to explain to him how to prioritize his health and stuff like that. I guess we'll see what happens tonight, what Greg can do. But I just personally want to see Gio play because I enjoy watching him play.
Central or out wide? What's the best spot in your mind for Gio Reyna?
I think as one of the wingers. I think he's very good at coming inside, but I don't really see him as one of the midfielders in this 4-3-3. That's where I see him.
We have a poll here. We got to get to that before we get the game started here on where the U.S. might finish in this octagonal. First, people are getting ahead of themselves a little bit here. That would take a big win. I guess it's possible. It would also take a Canada loss in Panama. I don't think that's as possible given the team that John Herdman has put out there. Second, much more likely given the goal differential. Third, let's not even talk about fourth once again. But this all comes back to pots for the U.S. too. Correct if I'm wrong here. Anybody who knows, I believe we are in pot 2. We are locked into pot 2.
Locked in.
Given what's happened around us in World Cup qualifying in Africa, in Asia, and in Europe in the final round of games yesterday, which had a bunch of MLSers involved, by the way. So we're in pot 2. Canada's fighting for pot 3. We're about to see a game at Estadio Nacional in San Jose, and you have played there, Sacha. You came off the bench way back now. What's it like playing there back in 2016 for that 4-0 Costa Rica win?
Yeah, I came in for the last few minutes of that game, and that was a beatdown. That was I remember the horrible feeling in the locker room, but it's nowhere near as bad as playing at Saprissa on the turf. I played there, and I think was 2009, right before we went to the Confederations Cup. We had a qualifier that I think we lost 3-1 or 3-2, but that was also a beatdown. But that was the fans right on top of you, loud. The field was terrible. It was tough. This one is still it's so open. You don't feel that intimidation from the crowd.
We'll see how it works out tonight. Calen, we had somebody in the chat that was didn't quite have Calen Carr in their mind. Ro Rubles here. Shout out, guys. I watch and listen to your podcast religiously. Shout out to David, Andrew, Matt, and the former Houston player. I forgot his name. LOL. Sorry, bro. You cool though. So your vibes are good. Your vibes are good.
Yeah. Calen, if you throw on the headgear, he'll recognize you and he'll remember you.
Yeah. I thought about that. Yeah. We actually, I used to do a bit where like, actually when I played in Houston, I would go to like meet the team things or whatever. And people would walk up to me and be like, "Oh, hey man, what's up?" And then they'd be like, "Oh, helmet." Oh. And I was like, what? Like,
I mean, iconic.
Yeah. It took on a life of its own. Yeah. I think I actually left that at the MLS offices, which I haven't been to in like a couple of years at this point. So,
I lost so much in that.
I hope that it's
transition.
like somebody like, a decade or two from now finds it, unearths it, and brings it back.
That thing's game worn too. I mean, that'd be collector's
Oh,
item.
yeah.
I'd put that up on my gallery wall.
Should be in the National Soccer Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
Right,
Get
yeah.
that helmet in there.
Somebody will dig it out eventually. Hopefully.
Other than goals, Doyle, give me your wish
future
list for
son.
tonight, man. We're two future son. Whoa.
Wait a minute.
Hopefully Wiebe son. How about that? Hopefully Cam goes in there.
I was gonna say, if anybody's gonna
hosting
stay on that
extra
train,
time,
it's probably me. Hoping for a girl with a third. Fingers crossed. Point to the sky. No time soon. Doyle, what do you want to see tonight?
Other than goals, and no injuries, obviously, I want to see. I want to see the U.S. come out. This should be noted. If a U.S. player gets a red card in this, they're suspended for the first game of the World Cup itself. That does not apply to yellow card accumulation. There's no if Tyler gets a yellow card, he's not suspended for the first game of the World Cup. If he gets a red card, he is. So no red cards is high on the list. But I do want to see the U.S. come out and use the ball a little bit. What's been interesting about these two games is kind of the Ralph Ragnickization of Greg Berhalter, because they've played so direct. They've been really willing to, when teams come up and kind of have pressed them, they've been willing to go over the top in a way and be vertical in a way that they really weren't doing throughout most of the Ocho. And that's good. I'd like to see that flexibility. Obviously, it led to two very good results and I think very good performances. But I do want to see this team go back to what they were doing and play kind of like how they played against El Salvador back in the January window when they were so good and they just couldn't put the ball in the back of the net. Really make Costa Rica feel that pressure, really be comfortable with the ball, turn possession into penetration and into chances and get into that flow, because it's been on the precipice at times, but it hasn't ever really come to fruition in qualifying. And I think it would be a great way to end it with a performance that's like, yeah, the system works. These guys can buy in and execute it. And these are the right guys to do it. I think that'd be a great way to end qualifying after everything that's happened since September.
I've gotten these guys' take on the tactical side of this team for months and months and months, years even. Sacha, what have you seen from sort of the evolution of what Greg is trying to do and how these players execute it? I mean, you're pretty familiar with the 4-3-3 formation. What do you think about what they try to do on the field and how they get it done?
I agree with a lot with what Matt said, that I would love to see them playing out of the back again, passing, creating from possession, being a little bit less direct, but it's worked for them in qualifiers. But I do like what I've seen, because I think early in the Greg Berhalter era, it's almost like they tried to pass through everything, and it was almost like not realistic in a way. Like they were losing some bad balls in their own box and in their own defensive third that were turning into chances for the other team. So I'm glad they found that balance in real games of not taking too much risk. I mean, the thing that always stuck in my mind recently is the failure in the Olympic qualifying, where it was almost the same. Like we were trying to pass through everything. And it's like, guys, the Olympics are on the line here. Like if there's too much pressure, let's play a little bit direct and play the ball up in their end and see what happens then. So, but I would like to see them tonight go back a little bit and try to dominate possession, which I think they can, especially with kind of a B lineup from Costa Rica. And with possession, you can really kill the crowd and all the, the noise level in there and all the momentum that Costa Rica can gain from the crowd. So we'll see what happens.
I remember.
Sash, let me ask you this. Where does Navas rank among the goalkeepers you've ever played against?
He's pretty freaking good, dude.
Yeah, he's ridiculous, right?
He's very good. I don't remember him making any ridiculous saves, in like the Costa Rica USA games or anything that stick out in my mind. But obviously, what he did at Real Madrid is, second to none amongst CONCACAF goalkeepers. And, we've had some very good ones in the States, but he's been so important to that national team for so long now.
He just saw the national anthems, if you're watching on Paramount Plus, by the way.
I'm gonna interrupt you, Wiebe. He had one against Josie in the qualifier at Red Bull Arena in 2017. It was midway through the second half, I think, or first half rather. I think it was just after the U.S. scored, and it was that breakaway. And you know how Josie does that on the breakaway. He's very good at feinting and getting the keeper to go down, and then he just sort of scoops it over him. I think it was like very similar to the goal that Josie scored to win the 2017 MLS Cup. He did the same thing on Navas, and I thought he had him. And that paw comes out of nowhere. The other day, after the game, after Costa Rica's game against El Salvador, I was going through Costa Rica Twitter, and the sentiment was like, if it wasn't for Navas, we're Honduras. We're on 4 or 5 points if it's not for Navas. He's that good.
Yeah, I agree. He's obviously very good. And Costa Rica started poorly in this World Cup qualifying, and it was like, oh, is it time for all these old guys to retire and let's get a new generation in and all that? And obviously he's been a big catalyst for what they've done since then.
I thought they did a good job of finding some. They had a bunch of camps in Costa Rica. They got a bunch of like sort of local guys. They built a little bit of chemistry. They mixed it up with young guys, and they still lean on the old guys, and here they are. If you were watching on Paramount Plus or CBS Sports or wherever you're watching tonight, that was one of the most rousing national anthems sung by a squad on the field that I've ever seen. Costa Rica was freaking belting it out, man. Like, those guys were barreling through that anthem. A bunch of fireworks going off. The last time around, it was 4-0 here. Jermaine Jones was involved in that one. He's on Twitter saying he thinks we make history tonight. It will be the first ever win for the U.S. in Costa Rica if they won 3-1. How do you see this one going down, guys? What's your prediction, Calen? I'll start with you.
Looking at the history in Costa Rica is not good. So I think that like kind of can't be discounted or pushed aside. And I think you see from the atmosphere there, it's going to be difficult. I think, though, from the group that the U.S. has pushed out, there is something in this game for us. And when you look at like the way we approached going to the Azteca, I think the U.S. can maybe get one goal, and I think that might be it. So I'm going to go with the U.S. with a 1-0 win on the road.
That's a good result. It's not as fun as we want it to be on the watch along. We want as many goals as we can possibly get. More than one, less than one. Final scoreline, Sash, what do you think?
I'm going to go U.S. is going to win 2-1. I think it's going to be a tough game. Obviously, this isn't Costa Rica's best lineup, and this is our best opportunity to get a win in qualifying. I say 2-1 for the U.S.
A lot was made of getting a win at Azteca. I think less has been made about getting a win in Costa Rica. You don't have some of the same sort of emotional ties to those U.S.-Mexico matches that we have the U.S.-Costa Rica, at least more in the casual fan base, but it is there, and the kickoff has begun. Costa Rica already putting pressure on the U.S. back line just 14 seconds in. If you want to watch this one, Paramount Plus, CBS Sports Network, head on over there. I believe it's also on TUDN. So those are your spots to watch. This is a watch-along show, folks. Get in the comments section. We will answer questions you have. If you want stories from Sacha on literally any stop in his career, feel free to drop them in there. We'll take the best stuff. We'll answer any questions about the U.S. or Canada or this CONCACAF cycle if you want, or we'll just sit around and BS. And I definitely forgot to get a beer, so at some point here when the action lulls, I will be heading upstairs to get a cold one to enjoy.
So
Wiebe,
you asked us what we want to see, and so what do you want to see other than the type of stoppage of play that allows you to get a beer?
Yeah, that would be nice. I want to see Costa Rica not kick the living crap out of Christian. And if they do, I want to see him respond in the way that we've seen in the past, where he's gotten angry and he's pretty direct, and in places where he can face people on the ball and take them on. I want to see a good game from Christian. I think what we're thinking about right now should be number one, qualifying for the World Cup, and number two, trying to figure out how we take our ceiling a little bit higher. What can give us the ability to not just compete, but to challenge the biggest teams in the World Cup and to make a step that we haven't necessarily before outside of the near semifinal appearance in South Korea and Japan. So I think we're in. I want to see Christian play like we know he's capable of playing, and like we saw in spurts against Panama on the road at a place like Costa Rica. I want us to make history, and I want us to build momentum. I have faith in that center back pairing. I have faith in the goalkeeper. I still have some question marks about how it's going to work out as far as the front three. So if Christian's on, hopefully that means Pepe gets some opportunities. I would just love to see our center forwards score goals and build confidence, and particularly Ricardo Pepi, who was so hot and now has been just, from a goal scoring perspective, as quiet as he can possibly be. So I'm with you, Doyle. I want to see goals, but I just want to see us find ways to raise our ceiling, whether that be tactically or from a confidence perspective or relationships perspective on the field. So let's go get it. Let's not sit back. We might be almost in, but I'd love to see us make history in Costa Rica.
I really like the way that the U.S. team, even at Azteca, their line of confrontation was like pretty high. Like it used to be, you set up shop at midfield and Mexico had the ball. And even in this game, we're only 2.5 minutes in, but U.S. stepping up high to try to press the ball and win the ball in higher spots up the field. I like our aggressiveness.
So that actually opens the door for me to ask you something a little tactical that Greg talked about back when he took the job. He talked about how he didn't like playing a mid-block 4-3-3 because he felt like defensively it's not a stable formation if you're in the mid-block. It's great when you're pressing. If you're sitting deep, it becomes a 4-5-1. So do you think that the formation that the U.S. is playing sort of lends itself more to being a front foot team than what we've seen in the past? That's one. And two, what do you think of Greg's analysis that a mid-block 4-3-3 is too unstable to sort of stay with that medium line of confrontation?
I agree with them. I think you've seen his teams in the past when they do go into a mid-block kind of adjust into more of a 4-4-2. Just to be able to cover spaces more and force the ball to play wide. Whereas in the 4-3-3, you see we do get kind of spread out sometimes if we're in a mid block, and there are spaces to play between the front line and the midfielders, and then it's kind of a question as to which center midfielder is going to step to if the team is playing with 1-6 or if the double pivot. So I think those questions kind of arise throughout the game if you're in a mid block. I do think the way that they are set up to be more of a stepping high pressing team.
Hit us with that question, Anders. Speaking of Christian Pulisic coming off a hat trick and an amazing goal that he says, hey, that was absolutely intentional, that touch. Jared wants to know, Sacha.
Christian is very online. Very online.
He's ready to respond. And his preferred medium is Instagram comments, which, I appreciate that. Sacha, what's your first impression when you played with Pulisic back in the day here?
My first impression was this kid is amazing and super talented. And the most important quality I think he had was that he was so easy to play with. There are guys that, either dance on the ball too much or take too many touches. And when they give you the ball, they've kind of stolen time from you. And he was just so easy to play with because he gave the ball to me in good spots, and then he made attacking runs every time off the ball. And so the connection that him and I had in only a few games that we played together was really good because he was a good soccer player. And when he would give me the ball, he would make runs, and he would give me the ball with time. And then his first touch out of everything and his burst of speed, like to beat guys off of his first touch and play on the half turn, it was just, for a young kid, it was at such a high level. And I really, really enjoyed playing with him.
I remember pulling the numbers on it back in the day. What I remember is something like you guys shared the field for about 105 minutes. And the U.S. scored 6 times when you guys were on the field together. And like two or three of them were against Trinidad and Tobago in a World Cup qualifier.
We only played, I think, the couple of games together that were both qualifiers. One was against St. Vincent that I think we both subbed into the game late, but I gave him 2 assists in that game and he gave me 1. And then the next game against Trinidad, I scored 1 early on and then he assisted a couple late where I think I played a 1-2 with him and he plays one across the box to Josie. So it was almost like the second assist. But yeah, like I said, he was really easy to play with and really easy to set him up for different types of plays.
That's an MLS assist, Sacha. An MLS, we're giving you that, man.
I got a few of those in my career.
We're pushing you over 20. We're not even messing around with that. In league play, that's yours all day, every day. We talked to DeMarcus Beasley a little bit about the captaincy, and it's switched around a little bit throughout these qualifiers in the final 3 games. I think it was Adams and Azteca. Christian, of course, against Panama got the 3 goals off it. Now it's Walker in this game. And Aaron Baker's asking us for Sacha or Calen to talk about how leadership works in a team as young as this group is and what happens when you don't have that like number one guy. The Dempsey Donovan era where I think you had some hierarchy there. You had guys that had been around for a long time. Big hit, saved by Navas. A little bit of a bobble there. It's like Miles Robinson off the set piece, put his laces right through it. Navas able to get a hand to it, squeaked through him, might have gotten in, but it's Keylor Navas. So it did.
Navas.
Big one there.
Good save.
Good first touch. Good patience to let it fall. He really smoked that one.
This is where it reveals you guys are ahead of me. Oh, man.
Oh no!
I gotta switch to my other.
I'm not last.
Platform.
I'm not last. I might be first. Nobody else had that one.
No, I'm coming. I'm switching.
Baby.
I'm going back to my other stream so I can get.
DeMarcus said he is an old school guy. He would prefer captaincy go to one guy. What do you think about this sort of rotating captaincy and leadership council?
I like it. I'm a fan of this. I think it shows that this young group has quite a few guys that are leaders in this team. I really like that tonight Walker Zimmerman is captain because I think he's been fantastic. I mean, it wasn't so long ago that he wasn't even called in the initial roster for some of these qualifiers and then was brought in as a replacement. I think it just shows his mentality and the type of person that he is. And I think it's kind of a reward for his play over the last few months. But clearly he's a leader. You have a guy like Aaron Long on the bench who's worn the armband too. Tyler Adams, clearly a leader. Calen Acosta's been around now a long time. Even guys like Yedlin, you've got a lot of these guys that can be leaders on this team. And I do like what he's doing, kind of switching it up every game. And I think in the important games, maybe in the World Cup, he'll stick with one guy. I like at different moments that he's almost put pressure on players. I think like the game in Orlando, giving Pulisic the armband, put a little pressure on him to be the leader, to be the guy on the field that day that makes the difference. And, he obviously really stepped up that game.
Sash, you played with under Jesse in
that's what I was gonna ask.
In New York, and like I know that Jesse had this like leadership council, and this seems like something that's been implemented within the national team, from what I know with Greg as well. Can you like describe for people that maybe aren't initiated or don't understand what the leadership council is, or how that system works, what that is, and kind of how you see that functioning maybe within this side?
Yeah, so I think the leadership council is typically, 4 or 5 guys, typically the leaders of the team, guys who show up every day, guys who have a good mentality, guys who have leadership qualities. And so I think within the national team, he's probably got more than 4 or 5 guys because, I've mentioned a lot of names already of guys that have leadership qualities. And then you kind of just meet with the coach. Probably they meet at the beginning of every camp, talk about things, talk about, where they are, what needs to happen, what type of leadership and mentality they need to show every day to bring the younger guys in, especially when there are new guys that come into camp. And then, with New York, we always tried to have one younger player as part of our leadership council to try to get a feel for the younger guys as well, because sometimes they don't feel comfortable speaking up in front of the older guys, but they'll talk amongst themselves, and then we can get a feel for it from the younger guy too. So I'm a big fan of leadership council.
That's cool. Yeah, I think the leadership, the idea that there's representation across like different generations or whatever ages is like important. I think I really like that. That said, I'm kind of with Bees on this one, where I like the idea of like one captain. You're not thinking about it all the time. And for me, the most obvious choice for me would be Tyler Adams, who I think was a part of those young leadership councils. Is that right? In New York. But I just think like the idea to take that out of it, but I do understand as well the idea as a manager, like you're looking for every edge you can at every match. And so if you can give maybe Christian the armband one game and you feel like that might give him an extra 5%, or if you can give it to Walker and you think that says something to the team as far as, hey, this was a guy that wasn't even being called up and is now wearing the armband. I see that as, from a managerial perspective, as something, as a string you can pull to potentially either send a message to the team or to give credit to a guy that you were trying to get a little bit more out of in a specific match. That said, I think the best teams ultimately, and the captains and leadership in general, is decided amongst the team regardless of whoever's wearing the armband. And I think that's a really positive part for this team, particularly, and why I don't worry about like Tyler Adams not wearing the armband, because it's like that's not what ultimately why he's a leader, right? Because he's wearing the armband. He's going to be that leader in front of the back line and holding other people accountable, whether he's wearing the armband or not, which is why I think you should have it sort of just all the time. So I'm kind of making both arguments, but I do think that, it can't be a gimmick, and you just have to kind of run that balance as a coach to not like hand it to a guy because for a reason that doesn't feel authentic to the team or doesn't work within the locker room. And generally speaking, I think we've talked a little bit offline, like some of the guys that seem to be seeking out the armband are not necessarily the ones that you would want to or always have the like ear of everyone in the locker room. But I think I think Greg has been able to use it in a point where like I couldn't argue with anybody he's handed it to at this point. And so there is a bit of reverence that like still exists within it, even if you share it amongst the team.
Yeah, I really like the responsibility part that you talked about, just different responsibility that he's put on different players throughout this whole qualifying time. It puts a little bit of weight on their shoulders, and I think it gives them a boost.
By the way, set pieces for the U.S. right now. Pepe with a shot across that Navas pawed away. So U.S. putting Costa Rica under a little bit of pressure.
Yeah, Zimmerman and Robinson obviously so dangerous on set pieces. But back to you, Calen, like I was saying, I've been part of teams where I don't wear the armband, but everyone in the locker room knows I'm the captain of the team. Like I'm the one who speaks the most, and I've been on teams also where I've worn the armband, and I've still had and tried to empower all the other players around me that are leaders to let them speak before the games or after a game. If a young guy even has had a good game and I don't want his head to get too big, it's like, all right, you're speaking to the team today, and things like that. So Tyler is probably the guy who speaks the most. If I had to guess, he probably talks, either before or after every game, because I think he has the right things to say and he has a calm and cool head. And, he's played in some big games in Champions League now, and he's a very mature kid. So, I don't really mind who wears the armband, because we all know that there are some leaders on that team.
I wonder how much Greg's hand was not forced, but how it just naturally happened that guys got switched around, given how much turnover there was in this group among some of those quote-unquote leaders at the start, whether it be Walker not being there. He's wearing it tonight. But like Weston being in and out, having the incident that he had, Pulisic being injured for long periods of time, wasn't with the team for long stretches. You just had a lot of turnover in the beginning and leading into qualifying that maybe prevented that. We'll see what happens in the World Cup. That's a long way away still. Got to get a result here, but feeling good about that side of things. I need to get the Canada game up, by the way. Somehow I was spaced on that.
I've been enjoying watching Canada try to build from the back. They've been really, I don't want to say uninterested in terms of building from the back throughout qualifying, but they've been pretty pragmatic about it. But they're playing Atiba in the middle of a back. And for U.S. fans who maybe don't know Atiba Hutchinson, he's 38 years old. He's been playing at Besiktas, which is a Champions League team in Germany, or in Turkey rather, for the past 10, 12 years at this point, something like that.
He's 39 now, Matt. Don't take a year off him.
There you go.
He is 39. He's aging like fine wine.
Holding it down for Gen X. He's been a fantastic two-way number 8 throughout his entire career. And now that age is finally catching up to him, they're kind of converting him to center back a little bit, especially in this back 5. And he's so good on the ball that I think he provides a different sort of dimension for Canada, who we all know when Canada goes to Qatar, they're going to be primarily a counterattacking team. But if they could have this little bit of a plan B where you can sort of build through Atiba a bit and punish teams that come up and try to press you, it makes them even scarier. And this is a team that's already pretty damn scary.
By the way, Atiba's been at Besiktas since 2013. We had to St. Ricketts on our last show, the Canada show, when we watched the qualification victory. He's played twice in Turkey, understands the culture there a little bit, and said it is a veritable miracle for a foreign player to come into one Turkish club and stay in that Turkish club and stay revered in the way that Atiba has been revered for the amount of time that he has. He's coming up on a decade in Istanbul. I would love for a Canadian legend like Atiba
it's hard to
get a statue, man. To get a statue somewhere in the old city. That would be incredible.
U.S. got a free kick coming up. How good is Musa, by the way, when he gets the ball and takes his first touch and starts driving forward? Like he can dribble out of things in the middle of the field so well, it's crazy.
Yeah, he's my favorite player in the pool, specifically because of that. Like you could give him the ball in traffic, and he's got the strength and the touch and like that little bit of shimmy to get out of trouble and then drive forward and put the defense under pressure.
I can't remember which game it was, but it was like it was the last window, the one before where Zach Steffen rolls him the ball, and there's like a guy pressuring him right on him. It's like kind of a tough spot, and he just lets it run through his legs and just like sprints straight through, then ends up like driving all the way through to break lines. And I was just kind of like, oh, he was in big trouble and like it did not seem phased at all. And there's just a couple moments like that in him where you look at him and you're like, wow, okay, this guy is another level.
What did you see?
He has like,
oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was saying his ability to just constantly try to play forward and drive forward with the ball is like different level. Like that's Champions League. He's going to be such an important player for the U.S. for many years to come. It's crazy how young he is still.
MLS legend Ariel Antuna with the goal for Mexico. So Mexico go up 1-0 on El Salvador. Making
Ariel
sure
Antuna,
that nothing insane could happen.
he was dog water in MLS. He was so bad when he was in MLS, and now he's out there scoring for CL as well to knock out. Was it Montreal to knock out Montreal?
It just goes to show you, man. MLS is the training ground. Like that really sharpens all the spears. You know what I mean? Sharpen iron.
Young men like Zlatan Ibrahimovic can be formed
exactly
in the crucible of MLS.
Crucible of MLS. We asked DeMarcus who his favorite player in the pool is. We just got Doyle's answer. DeMarcus said Brendan Aronson. Calen and Sacha, who's your favorite current player to watch in the pool right now?
Damn, that's a tough one.
Tough. I really do like Aronson also. I think he's a starter in Qatar for me. But okay, and then I got to say I really like Musa too.
Wait, go further into Aronson.
Go into Aronson.
What more do you like?
And what he could be at Leeds as well under Jesse.
Yeah, I mean that's just a extension of what he already is at Salzburg. Playing in that pressing formation, the amount of ground he covers, the amount of times he can pressure people during a game is like. I mean, he's got to be Jesse's favorite player. Like this guy, him and Tyler Adams are like made to a T. Like he built them in a machine to play Red Bull soccer, basically. So, and then the way Aronson fits into this team, you know, when he first started playing for Philly, I would text Jim Curtin and be like, "Hey, this kid is special, but he doesn't really have the final product yet." And then as he's getting this final product, you know, goals and assists and doing it for the national team, then that's the sky's the limit for that kid. Also, I think if he goes to Leeds, it'll be really fun to watch him in the Premier League every week. But playing for the national team, you know, like we said, the way that they're pressing high and the way he can be on the move and on the run and finishing off plays and setting up plays is really high level. And then I got to say Yunus Musa. Sorry, as I finish my Yunus Musa, but Pulisic in the end is still my favorite player.
The thing about Aronson that gets me is his instincts in transition. He just seems to have. It's almost like Landon. Landon was so good at recognizing a half a step before anybody else where the play was going to end up being, and that's why Landon he spent 15 years playing, and he was always open. And Aronson has some. He doesn't have Landon's breakaway speed, and he doesn't have Landon's finishing, not yet anyway. But that's who he reminds me of because of those moments. He's just so attuned to what's going to happen next.
You know, I got to say fitness, I think, plays a huge part of that. Like Landon was one of the fittest guys I ever played with. He was like in every MLS game we played against the Galaxy when I was on Chivas, like the last 15 minutes of the game was when he like came alive. It was like this guy was so fit, and I feel like Aronson is like that too. Like he never stops going, you know, and that's often overlooked by some players because some players start to go down as the game goes on, and the best players can go up as the game goes on and gets late stages when other guys are tired. And Aronson has that.
Yeah. It's like this, it's like speed endurance, right? You're like, there's some guys that might just like first sprint out of the gate, just like might even blow by Aronson, but it's like, he's going to do it, you know, 30 times in a match, and he'll be like, stick with me. Can you keep doing that? Yeah. And it's a different thing.
He probably does it more than 30 times a match, to be honest. Cause like, you know, Jesse would count these things, and like he would have meetings with players before the season started and be like, right, we think you should have like 35 or 40 sprints per game. And I would be like, whoa, that's a lot. I don't know if I can do that. But I mean, if he was asking me to do that many, I think a winger like him, he's probably doing 40 to 50 sprints per game, like opening it up.
Yeah. I think I'm going to go, if I had to pick, and the funny thing is there's so many great choices here. If I had to pick, I'd probably go right now with Gio. And part of it's because of like what I don't know, in a way, where I've like keep discovering. I feel like I'm discovering like new parts of his game in a way where I'm like, oh wow, he looks bigger than I saw him. Or like he can play in multiple spots, or like, and he has a little of the attitude too that I really like, as far as that I've seen in a couple guys, but I like the attitude of like.
Like the idea Jurgen would have liked him. Get nasty. We need to get nasty.
I just mean like you beat a couple players, and it's like, all right, like you did it, bro. Like swing, like find the pass, and he's like, no, like he's continuing to go, and I think that is something that we haven't had a lot with the U.S. program, and so I think there's a lot sort of still to be discovered from Gio, and I mean a lot already like. That's been revealed. That's really there. I hope he can kind of get healthy, but it feels like we're just kind of like scratching the surface. I feel like I have a good picture of a lot of the guys as far as like who they are, where they could potentially play. I think there's still a lot left to be discovered as far as like a lot of guys can get to bigger and bigger clubs, but I feel like Gio feels really early still as far as his development. So I think that's kind of one of the more exciting pieces and players for me to watch.
He definitely plays with a lot of swagger. Like he's not afraid of anybody, and he goes after things like, and like you said, we're kind of figuring things out about him too. Like last game, he came in against Panama and kind of had that no look pass to Luca De La Torre, kind of slipped ball. I didn't know he had that. That was pretty nice. That was fun to watch.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately because of health and just the early stage of his career, maybe he hasn't had the opportunity to show that. I loved some of the stories that Claudio's been telling recently, One when he just got to Dortmund, and he's like 17 years old. And he's like, Dad, I'm killing people in training. I should be starting. And Claudio's like, oh, hold on. Like, maybe in 6 months you'll start. Like, give it some time. He starts the next game. Like, those are the moments where like, oh, okay, like we're just now seeing like the mentality added to the ability. And then what you said, Calen, because I agree with you. You watch him, you're like, oh, okay, he's a pretty big guy. And then you actually see him go into 50-50s, and you see him just kind of like eject dudes. You're like, oh, okay, like he's a different type entirely. I really like Weston for that reason. I know we aren't seeing him right now, but when you talk about vibes on the field and swagger and just sort of the desire to sort of get in people's faces and to prove yourself, I really, really like Weston. I like the dominance that he has in the air and on set pieces, and I like the fact that it just seems like he believes he's going to dominate and does it. And I think you saw that at Juventus too. Not many people gave him a chance to stick there, because it was on loan, because he was coming from Schalke, who had been bad before, because what position does this guy play? And for him to go into Juventus as a young American player and do that, I thought was really special, and what he's been for this national team. And I'm glad that he sort of got to move on from the little hiccup that he had in that one camp. So it's a bummer he's not around. He's on crutches and a boot somewhere, but we are just spoiled for choice on so much of this stuff. By the way, if you're looking at live standings, Mexico are above the U.S. right now. That doesn't technically matter. If the U.S. get into the World Cup in the top 3 spots, we're into pot 2. But currently, Mexico up 1-0 against El Salvador.
So much of what you talked about with Weston and Gio is just like mentality that you can't teach, that I think these kids just have. It's like almost you want to be like, hey, kid, don't you realize you're at Dortmund and you're 17? Like, has anyone told you you're not like that good yet? But it's like it doesn't compute for them. Some of these world-class athletes are just made that way, that like they have to have this belief in themselves at all times, that they know, even if they're not, they know that they're better than everybody else. And it's that you can't teach that. These guys have it. And Weston is so confident. Gio seems like that the same way. It's a really, really incredible quality to have.
I think there's also like a bit of a cultural shift that's happened too, where like you see guys like Christian, winning the Champions League, or you see guys playing Champions League, and it's like that's almost now the bar for any of these young guys coming into the national team, where they're like, oh, I'm not just trying to like get to Europe. Like I'm trying to get to like Champions League or top clubs and potentially win. Like I feel like Tyler's like, I want to win Champions League. Like these guys are now seeing that's kind of like the new standard. And the perception has changed around American players too, where that's just like, it's not to say that guys in the past, we were talking about Canada before and the quality that's been there. It's like, it's not to say that guys in the past haven't had that same quality. It's just that they haven't had those same opportunities early. And I think that's the other thing too, as far as maybe the benefit of being on a young team where you just like, you almost don't even really know any better. And the expectation is like, oh, well, I grew up, we all played on the U17s and the U20s.
Yeah, that's my boy. We were in Frisco staying like 3 in a hotel room. And
and like he plays for Barcelona, he plays for Chelsea, he plays, so it's like, why wouldn't I be somewhere in that vicinity? And I think that's kind of like changed a little bit, where it's like before it was maybe, oh wow, these guys, I know there was
how good was
in our generation was like
Musa dribbling out.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, just that little turn. In our generation it was more like, okay, yeah, oh, he's playing in Europe, that's amazing. And I feel like now the like sort of bar has been set so much higher as far as expectations go.
Yeah, those guys, Calen, they don't even carpool with Bittner. They're like, I'm good, man. I got my own ride. Cool Calen Carr deep cut for you there.
I love that.
Yeah, like when I started getting in the national team and stuff, it was just like, all right, I just want to go to Europe and play in Europe. Like, okay, I would dream that like I could play for Real Madrid one day, but that was just a dream. That was like a thing you sit in your bed and you actually dream about. But my reality was not that. And that's the reality for these kids, that like one of them will play for Real Madrid one day. And like, it's amazing to see how far we've come. And like you said, the perception of Americans, like Christian doing so well and making the big transfer to Chelsea just opened so many more doors, I think, for other big clubs to look at players like Weston, was a prime example of that. After I doubted the move to Juve. Like I didn't think he would get a lot of playing time his first season, and the way he's established himself there has been so huge for himself, but also for more Americans as well.
Sometimes I feel like Brendan Arrington would be like trapped in some like reserve league somewhere, or like in college still or something. It's just like that's what I was talking about, more of the cultural shift, where it's like it might be like a speed test or something. You're like, no, this dude will not stop running. He has the technical ability. But coming through the Philadelphia Union Academy, like they trusted him and they played him and they got the benefits in MLS, and then they got the investment. Now he's just even from where he was when he left MLS to where he is now, you can see how quickly, in the right circumstances or in the right development path, how fast these guys can develop. It's incredible.
Just want to shout out the comment section right now, who are also, I don't know if they're asking, but I'm asking, Sacha, well, actually, Sacha, who's the poltergeist living in your house? is one of the questions.
You gotta
just banging pans, opening doors, shutting windows.
My kids are about to come home from soccer practice, and my wife's trying to get dinner ready for them. And then I have like a 9-month-old puppy that is
Okay.
so much.
I was like, do you live with
She's-
Cosmo from the Galaxies making tacos in the
little Stevie, the psychopath, I call her, is going nuts right now. I'm sorry,
that's funny.
guys.
What kind of dog? We're on a live stream, so we might as well ask.
I have 2 Brussels Griffons.
Oh wow,
Brussels
that sounds
Griffon.
fancy.
I've
I don't
never
even know
heard
what
of
that
that.
is.
Yeah,
I'll
I'm
have to
nodding.
Google
I'm
it.
not-
You only get that. You only get that if you've played for Anderlecht. You can
Yeah.
only get that. if
Exactly.
played
You
for
gotta
Anderlecht.
spend some time in
Once
Western
you
Europe.
played 100 games for Anderlecht, they give you Brussels.
Yeah.
That's
Doesn't matter if you
incredible.
want it or not.
Yeah.
What have we seen so far? Still 0-0 for the U.S. in
That's
Costa Rica.
I'll tell what I've seen is a game that does not feel like a World Cup qualifier. That's the big takeaway for me through half an hour. Like these teams are playing hard. It's harder than a friendly. It does not compare to what we saw the previous dozen games. So, which is fine. And, hopefully everybody gets out of there without injuries, without red cards. It's pretty clear to me that Costa Rica are fine finishing 4th place and having their full squad ready to go for that playoff against New Zealand. So.
I feel like the U.S. has been better though. The ball's been down in Costa Rica's end more. We've had multiple set pieces. The best chance was from Miles Robinson and also from Pepe. Costa Rica not really threatening yet.
Yeah.
Well, free kick for the U.S. right now. Here comes Zimmerman. That's who the close-up is on. Looks like it's him and Waston. Pulisic service, not exactly what he was looking for. Got some questions about Luca de la Torre in the chat. What have you made of him so far? Seems like he has sort of supplanted Sebastian Lletget in the eyes of Greg.
Are you asking me? Sorry.
Anybody? Yeah, no, it's all good.
I think he's a pretty tidy little player. I think he fits in with the team probably, because he plays in Holland and probably plays in a 4-3-3. I've never watched him play for Heracles, but
Just educated guesses.
yes,
Gonna guess 4-3-3.
Played friendlies against them before as typical Dutch team 4-3-3. That's a long time ago, but so tactically, I think he gets what's going on. I don't really see him as a difference maker. I think the other midfielders that we have are probably more talented and can do more things on their own and get into the attack a little bit more, but he's pretty good.
What I like best about De La Torre is that he's brave. He always wants the ball, and he's willing to do work off the ball to get it. And then once he's on it, he does look to play forward. He doesn't have, he's not as dynamic as obviously Weston or Musa can be, but he's to me he's just kind of like an ideal like for like backup for Musa. He does almost everything that Musa can do, just not quite as well. And I think that was actually huge. The couple of times he's played big minutes in qualifying. He's been really useful for the U.S. because of that. Because there were look, Lletget had like 2 really good years under Greg, and he's been a good player for a long time. But something happened, man. In the middle of 2020, he just stopped progressing the ball. He stopped getting on the ball and being willing to turn and drive forward and put pressure on the opposing defense. And I don't know, because he used to have that. But when he plays for the U.S. now, he just doesn't show it. And that's kind of why he's not playing for the U.S. now. And so, like, unquestionably, I think De La Torre has usurped Lletget's position in the pool. And look, that's kind of how you want it. If guys aren't performing, whether they're in MLS or not, and we've seen it with Josh Sargent and John Brooks too. If you're not performing, you can lose your job. And, ideally everybody's performing, but it never works that way. And so the door was open, and I think De La Torre kind of charged through it. And I think the U.S. is better off for it.
What's the level of competition like to get in and out of the national team, Sacha? Of waiting for these windows, of trying to position yourself, of the stakes for each individual player, of the level of competitiveness in camp once you're there to prove you should stay there. How's that different from, say, club soccer?
I just remember the first training session of every national team camp was just so hard. It was like everybody was going 100 miles an hour. Everybody was trying to compete super hard with each other. Everybody was trying to prove, it was usually 1 or 2 games in every camp. And it was like, I need to be on the field for that game. So that competition, it's a healthy competition, but it is very, very tough. And I think you either sink or you swim. And so that part for me was always hard. I think I always had pretty good competition in the midfield to try to get on the field. And then the other part is just trying to be in good form with your club team, because the coaches were always watching. When Bob Bradley was the coach and I played for Chivas, I would walk by his office and he would be on like his laptop watching some illegal stream of some guy playing in like the 2nd division in Germany or something. He was watching everything. So then I knew also when I went to Europe that every game I played, he would be catching some of it, So I was always trying to perform, and I always wanted to be part of the national team. That was a dream of mine since I was a kid. And, fortunately I got to live it, but every game I played for my club team, I always had in the back of my mind that the national team coach was watching.
Speaking of club, we have a question in here for you. Strangely, it must be some Orlando City fans in the chat. Says, what was your favorite moment playing for Orlando City, for the Lions? Sort of a little bit of a brief forgotten tenure there.
Yeah. Sorry, Orlando fans, but when I write the book of my career, that chapter is going to be very, very short.
Is there a book coming? Would you write a book? Can we look forward to that?
It's interesting. I recently read Andre Agassi's autobiography, and it was so good.
It's amazing.
It's amazing. And just the way it was written, it was just so honest and so brutally honest that I started remembering things in my head from different bits of my career from like the beginning and on. And it was like, I think like therapeutically, I just need to like start writing it all down, because it's like, it's also fun to relive these memories, but also just to get it out there and think about. So maybe the book will be coming one day, although I think it'll take a long time to write.
Okay. Wait, quick question though, because now you got me thinking. If you had a teammate or somebody that you played with that you would love to read their book about their time in MLS, who would that be?
Or outside of MLS?
Yeah.
Either way. Or both.
Okay, I don't think you guys will know him. This is just the first name that came to my mind. I think Calen knows him. A guy named Sam Reynolds.
Oh yeah.
Not popping for me.
Okay, so Sam Reynolds was a pool goalkeeper in MLS who was training and with Chivas basically for a few years. He ended up going to Toronto as a pool goalkeeper and then playing in a game with them, and I think they won their very first away game ever with him in goal. And then he played the next week in Salt Lake and took a goal kick and like tore his quad muscle and then never played again. And now he's an assistant coach at the University of San Francisco. He's a good friend of mine. We've always kept in touch. He's an awesome guy. But this guy is like the best storyteller you've ever heard. So like if you ever sat in a room with this guy, you'd just be crying, laughing for hours. So
Dude,
that's the guy I want to read his book.
last time I was in San Francisco, I met up with this guy, with Sam, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, I've been skateboarding. I've been teaching myself how to skateboard in the mornings. I've been going down to like the dog patch and like just skating against a bunch of like 12-year-olds. And he's like, yeah, I'm trying to like just shred it down there. They look at me like I'm crazy because I'm a dad and my kids don't skateboard, but I'm just down here trying to learn. And I'm like,
it's
so,
amazing. That's Sam Reynolds to a T.
Yeah. Legend.
If I could think of a more popular player that you guys, who I would like to read. I mean, I didn't play with him, but obviously Zlatan was pretty interesting character who I think has gone through a lot in his career. And I know he did write a book. I never read it, but I think that would be an interesting one to read.
I like that.
You
could do one just on his
MLS
chapter. Just on his MLS chapter alone would be interesting.
Yeah.
I would also take some guest chapters in his MLS chapter of other people's perceptions and viewpoints of Zlatan. I would need Zlatan's viewpoint, but then I would need I need to hold a mirror up to that as well and have other people confirm or deny or be like, hold on. That's not exactly how I remember those things.
You know who else would be a good one? Mike Grella.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mike Grella has some great stories from when he played in like the lower leagues on loan in England. He has this amazing. I think he played, a few. I think it was Scunthorpe. He tells this story of, it's like League One, and the team is just very direct, and it just doesn't fit his style, and he never plays, and then he finally gets in a game, and they get a penalty in like the 90th minute, and he's like, "I'm taking it." And he tries to Panenka it down the middle, and the goalie just catches it. Goes down the other way, and the other team scores a winner, and he's just like, never plays again.
He's like, it's over. But it's over at that point.
Yeah.
It's just very clear to you. That's it.
Bobby Boswell would be my answer. When I played with him in Houston, I think he was actually writing a book. I think he has actual chapters. I don't know if anybody wants to approach him with a book deal. This is the place to do it. Take it from YouTube, comment straight to Bobby. But he used to I remember being at local bars in Houston with him. And I think the Washington Post reporter, Stephen Goff, was doing an interview with him. And Bobby was playing Buck Hunter, drinking like a whiskey on the rocks, doing an interview while playing Buck Hunter. And I was sitting there next to him, watching him do this, being like, oh man, this guy is amazing. He's a living legend. So Bobby's got some great stories amazing career, was a fantastic defender and has such a range of experiences. So, and great storyteller as well too. So I think, and super smart guy. I think Bobby would be, I would read that book for sure. I might ask him just to send me a copy.
I was gonna say, if I had to choose one guy to go out and play Buck Hunter with and have a night where you both are dancing in the middle of the dance floor and having a dance competition, but then having an incredibly deep conversation on the way to the next bar, I think it would be Bobby.
Yeah,
it's good
specific night.
Some good post Houston. Back in the day when I was sent to Houston all the time to cover the Dynamo in the playoffs, and they always won, I ended up in some interesting situations.
Didn't see you much until we made the playoffs, Wiebe.
I haven't heard that before. I definitely did not hear that from Dom or any of you ever during that particular period. Should call up Dom right now and ask him how he feels about trading Kai Kamara, just to see what he says after that repeat question from many years in the past. We have some questions about Red Bulls for you too, Sacha. What's your favorite memory with the Red Bulls? This is from Henry.
Favorite memory from the Red Bulls? I think the one that sticks out is winning the Supporter Shield in Chicago. I think that was just the culmination of a really good season where I don't think anyone outside of our club had any expectations of us going in. It was also my first season back in MLS. That was fun, especially in Chicago, where I think New York Red Bulls as a club hadn't won away in 10 years. So we knew we had to go there on the final day and win. Was a pretty tall task, and that was pretty special.
$2-0 Mexico. Raul Jimenez from the spot.
Not surprising. Mexico is always going to win that game.
But I'll tell you, El Salvador has been so impressive relative to their talent throughout this thing. Hugo Perez has got them playing such good soccer, and they're going out there and they're being brave, right? They're not just putting guys behind the ball and playing for the 0-0. They're going out there and trying to use the ball and possess the ball and be a team that kind of plays the right way. And they've been fun to watch. And I hope it builds something bigger and better because it's been a while since El Salvador has been a real factor in CONCACAF.
I think it's going to be really interesting in this.
El Salvador coach, Carlos de los Cobos. I don't want to talk about it. Boy. I don't want to go there. Let's move on.
Yeah, you brought up Carlos.
I know.
You brought him up. You brought him up. I'm sad that this sort of era of qualifying is ending, but I'm also really interested in what the next era will look like, where teams like El Salvador will have more of a realistic chance. What that might do to some of the competition for players as well. Who makes decisions, with the logic of how do I get to a World Cup? And you could choose the U.S. and you could be sort of on the outskirts, and you see a little bit of this with the Roldans right now. But in this future, you could choose El Salvador and have a very realistic chance of going to a World Cup and being a legend in a country that hasn't had that sort of glory in years past. So I'm really curious to see what this next era of qualifying means for these other nations within CONCACAF that have sort of been, competing for a spot or two, largely behind the U.S. or Mexico. I said largely. Of course, we missed that last time, but I think it's gonna be interesting. It just won't be the same. We won't have the same sort of urgency for the big teams as we might have in the past. Who's the starting striker? Game 1 in Qatar. Knock on wood. We're going to Qatar.
It's a big question.
Who am I choosing, or who is Greg choosing?
How about both?
Greg's choosing. I think it's Ferreira. If I'm choosing, I'm picking Josie.
Love it.
I've been openly rooting for Josie to get back in there for a long time now. Come on, get healthy, man. Get going a little bit. If Buxa leaves, take that starting spot, get some momentum. I just think with the wingers that we have and the other options, he's by far. I talked about ceiling earlier. If you're talking about ceiling, he raises our ceiling and the ceiling of the players around him the most. But there are a lot of ifs there.
Yeah, I'd love to see him get healthy and score a bunch of goals this season for New England and be that starter, because I think he would raise the level of all the guys around him on the national team. And he's still the best finisher, the best passer. He's the best striker, American striker we have, I think.
What would it take for him?
I don't disagree with that, man.
What would it take though for him to do that? Does he need to be consistently starting in MLS to be showing that he can be depended upon from a 90-minute perspective or 70-minute perspective, or is if he's coming in for Bo or Buxa and scoring goals off the bench, does that get him a place into the team? How does that kind of how do I follow this path? Because I want to believe in that too.
I don't know. I mean, I think the easiest path is Buxa gets sold in the summer. Josie becomes a starter alongside Bo for the rest of the season and finishes with 12 to 14 goals. He's hot like Edson Buttle and Hercules Gomez were right up before 2010. But the quality that he has compared to those players, and it's night and day.
It's looking like Pepe might be in the Bundesliga next year. That was a big question mark. I mean, they're on the very, very edge right now. They do have a game in hand on Hertha and Arminia and Fürth, but they're 26 points. Stuttgart's on 26 as well, but he doesn't have any goals. He's not playing. What do you make of Pepe's rise, Sasha? I mean, it was meteoric in a lot of ways. It happened so fast.
It was fast. I really
Kids
don't
are home.
like that.
Kids are home.
What's up, squad? I really never liked the move to Augsburg. It's just so hard to go into a team mid-season that's battling relegation where chances are going to be hard to come by. When he was rumored to go to Ajax, that was Go to Ajax and don't worry about the money at this point in your career. Like that would be amazing. I don't know how real that was or not, but I don't think he's anywhere near the finished product yet. I think he just, scored a bunch of goals in a short succession, and he had to strike when the iron was hot, and is probably making a lot of money at Augsburg in a big transfer. But for me, I don't think he's close to the final product yet.
Going back to the Josie thing, the other thing I like about that is just like the idea that the team can't just be one thing. And what I mean by that is more like having different ranges of experience is really good for this team. Like, I think part of the reason why Walker Zimmerman, like beyond his, attributes or whatever in playing is the fact that like he's been around a bit. Like, he's a little bit older. He's been around. He knows, like, he has some like personality and experience. And I think that can that's one thing that I give this group a ton of credit for, is that they really haven't had a lot of people to kind of lean on to like have that experience or to teach them the ways or go. And but I feel like the presence of somebody like Josie, and even just like, anecdotally, the way that he seems to be like bigging up the team. Those are things where we sort of like, because of the craziness of this last cycle and, the tragedy of it all, it sort of just kind of blocked off of like a complete fresh start. And that was one of the big things I kind of felt was lacking early on in this new sort of cycle, was like, there's really nobody to kind of show you what this means. And like to kind of help you along through any of the like struggles. And the part of the impressive part was like, every time this team still managed to like hit a plateau or get around it, they sort of found it within themselves to get the best out of themselves and push themselves to another level, like against those Mexico teams in those finals. And that was super impressive. But I still think when it comes to a World Cup, they do have guys who have played at big club levels, and, DeAndre's been to a World Cup, and some guys they'll be able to lean on. And I don't have questions really so much more about the kind of personality of this team, but adding another voice to the room that has that kind of confidence, that can kind of like walk into a locker room and command that and kind of give that to the rest of the guys, I think would be something that's like, would be really good for the team. Even if it's not Josie, like it might be another. I thought the Edson and Herc examples were great too, where it's like somebody that might not be necessarily like, not everybody needs to fit into this phenom role of like, wow, we're going to hit on all 11 positions as phenom under 24-year-old players. Like, that's not always the best makeup of a team. So I would be interested to see if, again, like there's a number 9 somewhere, especially that is not necessarily like, doesn't fit into that same traditional mold, but could get hot at the right time. And that's what you need, especially for the number 9 position, heading towards like a short tournament like that.
I kind of disagree about the Josie, not disagree, but like my take on it, the Josie thing is like, this team doesn't need an older guy to come in and like be a leader for them. Like, I feel like they have a lot of leaders in their team already, and they've kind of gone through all these trials and tribulations of World Cup qualifying, and they're going to make it to the World Cup. So for me, it's just like, I just think Josie's the best striker. Purely on a soccer standpoint, he would make the team better, in my opinion, and it would push them a little bit further than possibly they could get without him, in my opinion.
I think back on some of the relationships Josie's had with attacking players and the partnerships that he's been able to create, whether it be Jovinko or Pozuelo at times, and what he had with Pulisic in the brief sort of moments that we saw them together, and the way his skill set would work off those guys. And I think he's at a point in his career where he's maybe not going to try to be that. He wouldn't be trying to be that guy. You talk about redemption team earlier on. He'd be the ultimate. He's like the definition of redemption team at this point. Like his body sort of let him down. He missed out on a bunch of different moments. He at the World Cup, he got hurt. He just never had that like on the big stage moment to really show people who he was and his quality in an international sense. And I get the feeling and from talking to him, and that he would just be thankful for the opportunity and would, as you said, Sasha, I think just like level up the guys around him. And if the ball hits his foot in the box, or if he peels off into the channel and he's 1v1 with the keeper, like, who do you want in that position? Do you want Pepe? Do you want Ferreira? Do you want Sargent? Do you want Pifak? Do you want DK? Fill in the blank, or do you want Josie? I'm taking Josie. Like, if the ball's got to go in the back of the net in that moment in a high leverage World Cup situation, I'm taking Josie. It just goes back to the trusting his body part of it, and trusting him to get in form, and that's on him, right? Like, he's got to do that. I hope if he does it, Greg would give him that opportunity. But we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I've been thinking about that for 2 years. Easy. Just like, please, man, just get healthy. Please just get healthy.
I've been thinking about it since I kicked his ass in the tunnel in Toronto.
He wouldn't. He had a good laugh about that one. When he had a good laugh. He didn't want to go too deep into that. But yeah, but we were talking about sort of I think, maybe not within the team, but within the competitive aspect of the game. I think he has some attributes like that I like too in a World Cup situation. And also understanding how quickly that opportunity can go poof too. Like, to me, it's not necessarily about the leadership, and you guys have been in these locker rooms. I haven't, so I'm not gonna comment on that part. But the perspective that I think a guy like that can bring is interesting as well. We'll see.
Yeah, it's any player that has been in with the national team for a while, and then your national team career is over. Like, I haven't played for the national team since 2017, I think, but like, what I wouldn't give to play one more game with the national team, like I still like dream in my mind that I can play for the national team still. Like, I know it's gone, but it's like Josie probably has that. Like, he's like, I still have more to give. Like, I want to play again for the national team, and he still can, in my opinion.
He's not saying it publicly, and I think that's
Wiebe,
smart.
You tried to press him on it. Yeah,
he's not saying it publicly. He's playing that, I think, in the right way politically, but you can just feel that, and it's like, come on, like how could he not?
Who doesn't?
How could he not?
Exactly.
Yeah, how could he not?
Exactly.
Like, how could you shelve that dream? You don't. You just don't. By the way, I saw some news today, Sacha, and I still remember our chat back at the old studio way back in the day. We did that long, like, sort of like retrospective interview on all the different stops in your career. There's a story that came out today that they're considering going to 26 players for these World Cup squads. And I've been thinking a lot over the last couple of days about all the guys that have contributed. And we've talked a ton about the depth that Greg has called upon, and this team effort to get to this point. But then there comes a time where the team that was available for all the qualification gets winnowed down to 23, and that's painful for the players that are on the bridge. And you were on the wrong side of that. What do you think about this idea of expanding World Cup squads? In particular, in sort of this modern day where we've seen subs expanded, we've seen some of the sort of the accepted rules, so to speak, or like parameters of the game get shifted with the sub rule, etc.
I'm very interested because I read that they were going to have like a coaches conference and ask the coaches their thoughts on it. And I'd be very interested to hear the coaches' thoughts. Like, do they want more players, or do they think 23 is already a lot for a tournament like this? Do you risk bringing more guys who maybe are unhappy that they don't see the field, like managing egos and things like that? I'd be interested to hear their thoughts. Me personally, as a player, I think 26 is better. You get 3 more guys who get to fulfill their lifelong dream of going to a World Cup, so why not?
Do you think the egos how big of an issue do you think that could be?
There are certain guys that I think, I'm not thinking of anybody in particular on this current team, but there are always guys in the national team that are upset when they're not playing. And sometimes they're visible about it, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes they go off in 2s and 3s and chat about it and whine. And that's never good for the team or team camaraderie or the mentality of the team. So, it happens. It happens in every team. Everybody wants to play. Everybody wants to play in the World Cup. Everybody wants to be on the field. Everyone believes in themselves that they can be the guy that can help make the difference. So I don't know how much that would really come into play in the coaches' minds, but I'd be interested to hear their thoughts on it. But if they could have done that in 2010, it would have been fantastic.
It's a tough one. Because it does change your decision making, and I would imagine once you get to like that level, there's not a lot of guys that are just necessarily happy to be there. So it's like you get so close that you sniff it and you want to get on there. And I just think like even guys, when I think on the club perspective, that were great players, but like were way buried behind like big players and just became a problem at certain situation where the expectation didn't match the reality, and that can like start to like chip away at things. So it is a really like it's one of those things I think isn't really talked about maybe a lot as far as like roster selection, where we kind of just look around and say who do we think is in the best form or otherwise, where there's a lot more that goes into it as far as who's a guy that I know I can depend, like, because like that also makes into a decision as who you trust to bring in to an actual match. If the guy was sulking when you weren't playing, I've seen it go both ways, because I've seen some, especially from the striker, from the 9 position, guys that sulk and didn't play and then went and, demanded a trade or told their agent or whatever. Like, you put them in the next week and they're great because they're like desperate to play. And then some guys where you put in to play or who have been sulking around that you wouldn't actually trust because their mentality isn't right. So it kind of depends on each individual situation, but it's definitely a big factor in like choosing who you want to put onto a team.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure like the coaches they think about these things, like who's going to be a cheerleader in the team and be behind his teammates even if he doesn't play 1 minute, and who's going to be the guy that's sulking on the end of the bench and talking crap about his teammates and why he should be on the field and ruining the mood of the team. So I'm sure coaches consider all these things. Yeah,
because in the fine margins, that's what separates most teams. I mean, just from MLS perspective, like that, all the teams are good. I think the gulf is actually maybe widened a little bit more now, but it's like the difference between like some of the best teams that I were on and the teams that went far were like, yeah, we had top quality, but also like the guys that didn't even play were like pushing, and great locker rooms, like all that type of stuff was super important and something that is often unseen.
Do you think that comes down to the individual players or the way the manager manages them?
I think it's both. Like, I think the most important thing is just kind of that honesty and open communication and dialogue, where it's just like, if you're out the team, exactly why, you can understand it, you can accept it. If the team wins and you're doing well, like you feel like you're going to keep your place, or you can understand why things change. And then like the other part of it is just like part of the man management, I think, is understanding the research of things. What happened, bro?
The game's back on. Navas just made a spectacular save on Miles Robinson off a set piece.
Somehow I was watching Canada.
Tyler Adams is off at the half. De La Torre's on, so Kellen's moved back to the 6, which I think is very smart from Greg. The U.S. is just putting Costa Rica under a bit of pressure on set pieces, but like it's clearly going to take something very special to beat Keylor Navas tonight, even though this game doesn't actually really mean anything for them. He's just phenomenal.
Yeah,
I mean, he's got a claim on best CONCACAF player ever. Right, it's probably Hugo Sanchez. He won 5 Pichichis, but Navas, he's incredible. It's one of those two guys.
Christian's delivery has been really good in this window. Like the balls he's been able to put into the box have been consistently dangerous. Only other thing, just to like finish off that last point, was just like I remember when I got traded to Houston. Sacha, like Dom was the San Jose coach when I was playing at Berkeley, and I talked to him about doing Generation Adidas and didn't do it. But ultimately, like I knew him since I was like 18 years old. And I heard that he had talked to like John Conway, who was like a backup goalkeeper in Chicago when I was there, but knew Dom super well, and was like, he did a ton of research on like how I was training, what my attitude was like. And he knew me since I was like a kid, And so like, I think that sort of level of like attention to detail or understanding man management, like before you even pick a player or bring him in, is something I think like the best managers like do that research and figure out exactly the mentality of the person that they're picking.
As they should.
Who is, as we see Adams come off, we'll start with you, Doyle, because we've been sort of just bantering about for here a little bit. Who is the MVP of qualifying for the U.S. so far?
Tyler Adams. And it's not that he was flawless. There were a couple of games. The game at Jamaica, he definitely could have been better. There were a couple others that I thought he was not as good as he could have been. But like, we got so lucky that he was healthy and that he never got suspended throughout all of this, because he just raises the floor so high when he's playing at D-mid. And like, 1-0 Costa Rica. His ability to put out fires, his ability to move the ball around. He's just having him out there is a security blanket that not a lot of other teams can manage. So he's the MVP. The second place MVP is either Walker or Miles. If you could put them together, those two guys are it. So
San Jose.
I gotta throw out a one who doesn't get talked about enough, who I think has been good in qualifying, is Anthony Robinson.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna go there.
Yep.
It's Jedi, by the way. You got to go Jedi.
Yeah,
It's Jedi. I've broken myself of the habit as well. The Costa Rica team really enjoyed that. They're not going to get 6, but they are all smiles here. This looks like a little bit, not a free run, but Calen's with him, lets him go to Walker in that little bit of a zone that they have set up at the top of the 6, and then it's just sort of a free header over the top. It's not that he out-jumps anybody. The service just dips. A little bit of maybe a misjudgment.
It felt like a set piece one way or the other was going to be crucial, like the way that this was going to be, turn the game. The U.S. I thought was going to be the one to get it. But
I mean, it goes one way, and Navas makes the save a few times now on set pieces. It's been the difference.
Yep.
Got a dead guy. There's a guy in the chat his name is Dead Beef, and he says he refuses to call Anthony Jedi since it's a stupid name. Your name is Dead Beef, dude. Like, you're in a public forum with the name Dead Beef. Like, what are you talking about? Self-awareness, just whoop straight over the top.
Tell him, Wiebe. Tell him.
Sometimes I just can't. I can't believe.
No, Jedi is bold. I feel like Jedi is bold. Jedi is bold, though. Like, I think it's fair game to question, but he's got so many assists right now. He's playing so well. I'm like, I'll call you whatever you want, man. Like, just like, and I also think he is, there were times where I thought I had questioned his involvement. Like, he can at times look a little bit robotic. Like he's maybe not like, He doesn't have the like same, especially when you put him in like contrast to someone like Dest, but same time, like the same way we talked about Brendan Aronson and the way that he just kind of like will like wear you down. I think Jedi has that same thing where he like is going to make that. It's not like he's going to trick you in a way, but he's going to continually make that same run up and down. He's going to get up, get down. I think he's developed a nice little partnership with Christian as well, where he's been able to kind of just like be an outlet, a safety valve that Christian knows he's going to be coming down his shoulder, and that opens up space. And if you're not getting assists, like if he's, that assist to Christian gets pulled down on that one in the last match against Panama, but he lays it off, and Jedi is able to get that crossover to Areola. But it's like, if he wasn't a genuine threat with his service, it's not going to draw the same attention away from Christian. I think that's still a big issue, and maybe the big thing we have to deal with from a number 9 position is like, how do we get Christian? One, I've been saying for a long time, like we need to get Christian on the move, because when he's static and receiving the ball, he's going to be easier to mark. And then they start bringing 1 and 2, and I can't count the many times he's been fouled, like facing away from goal. And we want to get him running at players on the move. That's where he's most dangerous. I think I
hate to break in, but Panama's up 1-0. That's bad news for Canada's Pot C, Pot 3 hopes. They need to win that game. They had a big understanding there. That is. I'm waiting for the replay here. Looks like a counterattack.
That's a good goal. That's a really good goal.
Yeah, it is.
Great ball to the back post. First time finish over the top.
Good goal.
That stadium gets rocking. I think I was one of two like journalists covering the U.S. that was there for the Sanzusi moment, and that place gets going. And on that day,
which city is this in?
It's in Panama City.
Oh, I played a Champions League game there actually.
Yeah, it's the same. It's their national stadium, quote unquote, as well.
Okay, yeah, that's no joke. We lost.
No. Yeah. Is that who scored this goal? Is that?
That's the number. Is that Torres number?
I was just saying, is that Gabby Torres? I was like, I thought I was seeing something. I was like, that is Gabby Torres. Is it truly ball. Gabby Torres? I love in these Central American stadiums all the banners, like there's one in Costa Rica tonight that's like, well, like never stop believing, we'll always support you. That always, like, they have these just like massive banners in all these stadiums.
I think I remember from that game, the Sanzusi game. I played in that game, and I remember I think there was a big sign that said like, "We're going to the World Cup."
I can't remember that one.
It was just like heartbreaking at the end. Like, we won the game. Like, we're playing to win. Of course, we're playing to win. But they went from going to the World Cup to out of the World Cup in minutes, and the place went from so loud party to dead. Like, even the players on the guys I was playing against, it was like, there's always winners and losers in sports, but sometimes you just feel bad.
Yeah,
it's just sad.
You can feel that it broke them. And the whole night was insane. Like, I remember, I think when Mexico went down, like everybody had radios. And so before I even knew Mexico was down, the whole stadium in the middle of a nothing, like midfield, balls just getting passed around, just starts going crazy. Like, beer is, thousands of dollars of beer is just being thrown in the air. And I remember looking around being like, wait, hold on. And I also remember the security guard at the end of it. We were in this like weird spot. They don't really have a press area. And the security guard there is literally, he's crying, like, when this game ends. The sort of like the bundle of emotions and the back and forth of it, I felt I didn't know what to do afterwards. I remember going on to interview guys and just being like, what do you do? What do you say, man? Like, what the hell just happened? Like, a national dream just went up in smoke.
It's horrible. It's the same as watching those playoff qualifiers in Europe yesterday and Africa. Like, the way that it comes down to just one game in Africa or a home and away, it's brutal. It's so brutal.
Yeah, Algeria, that was
incredible.
Their coach, the way their coach. I mean, I can't imagine, especially given sort of the rigmarole that they go through to just get to the two leg playoff. I mean, you think back to what Bob Bradley did and all the success they had and didn't even get to that point. But then to get to that point, to score the goal and to think this is it, but they defended that moment so poorly too. It's still just crushing. Absolutely crushing. How important is it for Canada to win this game somehow? They've got to push.
2-0 Costa Rica.
Looks like another set piece.
Another set piece. Stefan comes out, can't hang on to it, running around.
Doyle, you're literally 2 minutes ahead of me.
Yeah, dude.
Pay for cable.
Boy, this is not exactly not the note that you wanted to end on. But does it give credibility? I know that both these teams are playing in a different way than they would have had it been a different game, but how much credibility does it give to the decision to go for it in Mexico City? I know, Doyle, we've had this conversation a number of times. How have you? Where are you now on the roster management in the 11s?
Obviously, it worked out, but the whole reason that I didn't think it was wise to go for it in Mexico City is to avoid a performance like this in the third game where guys have, completely dead legs. The U.S. is not doing anything. I don't want to say that. They're not sharp going forward. They look like they've played 180 hard minutes over the past few days, and most of them have. So, playing a team composed mostly of guys we would consider to be backups at Mexico City, the idea was to prioritize the Panama game, which was must win, and then this game. With the way that things turned out, this game didn't have as much on it. So it's tough. Like you're looking at it as it's a counterfactual, but my point of view here is that if these guys weren't completely exhausted, the guys like Jedi and the center backs and Pulisic, I think the U.S. would look very different in this game. And the reason they're very exhausted is because 6 days ago they played 80 or 90 minutes at 7,200 feet, and then they played 90 more minutes a few days after that in Florida. So of course you end up with something like this. Whereas Costa Rica, they rotated their whole damn squad. They look pretty fresh.
Right, but I agree with that. But it's like at the same time though, like this isn't this isn't a good result for us, but this isn't a bad result for us. Like the whole point is to like get qualified, right? And this was going back to my point earlier of saying like I was able to sleep the last few nights is the fact that we got that point in Mexico. We're able to now say, okay, well, yeah, this isn't necessarily the best performance, but at the same time, like I'm not in panic mode that we're going to concede 5 goals in the last half hour. Now, knock on wood, but I don't
believe it would only need. I think they only need. I think they would only need 4.
Four more at this point.
Only 4.
You're right.
Okay.
Yeah, Calen, you're absolutely right. Like with the way things worked out, what Greg did has pretty much worked, and I'm glad for it.
But even more so, like Canada, like Costa Rica is one of the hottest teams in the region right now. So it's like, how do you like going there and trying to say, okay, we have to get a result from this game? It's going to be difficult.
For sure.
And so like to say that we're going to leave it to this, especially in the form that they've been in, like this feels almost.
I'm going to push
more
back
of a
before you
sense of,
even
like,
finish
thank
that,
God we got this.
because I don't think playing the backups is forfeiting the Mexico game. I think that going down there with guys who are consistently getting results in CCL and guys who have played big roles throughout qualifying and helped get results, like I don't think that is saying we have no chance. I think it's prioritizing the Panama game and this game. But anyway, please continue. I just want to get that on the record. So
yeah, but the Panama game, the point was like, really, can you get through these first 2? And they almost took 3 from the first match, and I think they should have. They weren't able to, but they got a valuable road point, and then they won at home, which then set up this game to be a little bit of like survive in advance, which, I just think that I feel like Berhalter has gotten this right to this point, and based on Costa Rica's form and based on what, like the way that they've been and the difficulty we've had there specifically, I feel better. Like this game has almost been more of a reminder for me of like, thank God we didn't leave it till this point to need a result in a way, because like that could have ended up in a situation that could have even put us in made me really nervous about our qualification overall.
I think about the 3 games and the difference in this qualification from before, and also the records in Costa Rica and in Mexico and the vulnerability of Mexico. And it feels to me like Greg said, when I have my fresh guys, I'm going to go for it. And no matter what happens, they probably won't be fresh in game 3. So between Azteca or Costa Rica, first game, no miles on the legs, at least internationally, versus 2 games in and all the up and downs and all the reliance you have on other opponents to get to that point. It felt to me like he said the first 2 are actually our best chances to get points. Now that might be just convenient thinking because we're losing on 2 set pieces right now, but also getting the job done early, given what we knew last time. I definitely understand that sentiment.
Our depth also stepped up for us in a big way, where all the guys that came in Panama did an excellent job. And I think the third game sometimes is where it's a little bit revealing, where you wouldn't have necessarily needed to use all of those guys in the last match if everybody wasn't like, even with the guys that have been suspended, but then like the stomach bug that's gone through the team and the form of different guys that have been around. So it's like, I don't know. I just think that's another factor.
What do you think
They're
about
kind
the
of
3?
playing like they got the shits right now? So maybe that's the bug is the explain.
I don't know. I'm not able to do much when I got those. I mean, I'm pretty
Wiebe,
stationary.
don't share too much. Don't share too much, Wiebe. Come on.
How does a 3-game window change things in your opinion, Sacha? Like that hasn't been something that any team in CONCACAF has done in the past. And I think it played a pretty outsized role in this octagonal.
Yeah, it made things very interesting because coaches have never really had to rest guys or think about playing guys. It was mostly 2 games, and it was the best players were going to play both games. 3 games is tough in a week. Clearly, our guys are tired. I originally thought I would probably do things a little bit differently if I were the coach with the first game in Mexico, kind of like what Doyle was saying, to have guys better prepared for this game. But also, like Calen said, I am glad we did it the way we did because now we really didn't have to worry about this game, and things worked out really well for us.
I do think it is fair to question like Zach right now if we're gonna be critical of the guys that are playing. Like,
oh, you think?
Yeah, he struggled like off even in the last match, which was a 5-1 win, and I came out and backed him and was like 0-0, like clean sheet in the Azteca, and then he was at home, 5-1 win. Like that's not going to shake his place. But I've seen, especially on crosses, he struggled tracking the flight. He's now dropped this one, which turned to a goal. The last one that in the last match that they didn't actually capitalize on, and he was able to kind of bail himself out on, or you could say Panama bailed him out on it too. But it's just that part to me seems like if we're going to be picking apart some places that like are question marks, that's I think a worrying sign.
Remember how mad everybody got when I said that Turner's better than he is? I mean, he just straight up is. Stefan's got a ton of talent, but he has not put it together like you kind of need to from a number 1 keeper. And nights like tonight are the best example of that.
Our chat is going crazy, by the way. Chat was pretty, 0-0. The chat was pretty calm. There wasn't a lot going on. You just had Mr. Dead Beef in here saying stupid stuff. But boy, they're getting after it right now. We had somebody ask if third in an octagonal is a disappointment in any way. Is there any disappointment in finishing third? That's like a hard thing to even think about because you're going to the World Cup. Is there any disappointment in third?
Look, you're going to the World Cup, which is all that matters, because once you get to the World Cup and you make a run, no one's going to remember we finished third and no one's going to care. The only thing that I would say is that this is probably the weakest Mexico team we've seen in some years, and they're 3 points ahead of us. So that's just not a good look, I think, as far as like our rivalry, But although we've had Mexico's number and we've done well, we always want to finish ahead of Mexico.
Oh, God, thank God we got a point at the Azteca. Thank God. The other thing I think when I'm watching this game, too, is we went back to Navas, and like it's easy at 2-0 to get a little bit rattled and to be like, man, what the hell? Like, I thought this is a rotated Costa Rica team. Like, we were going to go make history. We're going to go do this, that, and the other. But, like, again, Navas stops what might be a 2-0 U.S. lead for other keepers in the region, other keepers in the World Cup, because 95% of the teams in the World Cup are not going to have Keylor Navas quality keeping. But that doesn't erase the fact that the U.S. is down 2-0. I did think it was interesting that he went back to that same team from the Azteca. I thought that we might see a little bit more rotation. Like, it just seemed like Musa was cooked after those 2 games. It seemed like there were a number of guys. Like, I thought maybe Pulisic would get a rest as well. But it doesn't help to have Areola hurt. But hey, there are still 20 minutes left. I think U.S. has an attacking free kick here, but Doyle hasn't responded to it, so I know it's not a goal. That's how I watch, and I'm like, okay, we got a good spot here. We're in a great spot, but Doyle has not done anything, so I know it means, jack. Nothing's going to happen from it. And as predicted, yeah. What was for dinner for the kids tonight, Sasha? Oh,
I don't even know.
Nice ball in. Musa on the shot. Oh, deflected over the top. That was a good chance.
Great run by Pulisic and great pass by Reyna.
I mean, this is ideal in every way for Costa Rica. You're not going to get a yellow card suspension for a key guy. It looks like you're going to preserve your home juju against the U.S. and you're going to go into, and unless something changes drastically here, playoff against New Zealand that you'll be favored in. I hope they make the World Cup. No offense to the Kiwis.
Do we have a big Kiwi contingent?
I don't know. The chat probably. I don't know if Simon Elliott's in the chat or what's going on with that. If we've got Andrew Boyens who's hanging out with us tonight, or if we can make any other good MLS New Zealand references.
Great calls.
Yeah, just got to toss them out here.
Wait, Sasha, who's our
Kip Colby? Can we get Kip Colby reference in right now, real quick?
No, Sasha, we had Blue Stars, our Kiwi.
Tony Lockhead?
Yeah, Tony
Lockhead.
Lockhead.
Tony Lockhead, another good one. Yeah.
I can't believe it's taken us to the 73rd minute to get to
that would have been a really
County
good
Blue Star.
That would have been a really
reference.
Good Instagram one. I think we did some like this, the trivia of name all the Kiwis in MLS history.
Name all the Blue Stars.
Me and Calen are talking about our PDL team that was MLS draft frenzy team.
You're back with Nick, right? Nick Veslov's. Yeah.
Our head coach of our PDL team is an assistant coach to the LA Galaxy now.
Legendary squad.
Yeah,
Legendary.
Look, Tony had 2 years. He had 06 in New England, and then he was Chivas USA in 14.
I think he played in a World Cup, didn't he?
Might have played in a cup.
I think he was in South Africa. Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
2010 South Africa. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Legend. It's funny. I don't even remember that's the crazy part of how good this PDL team was. Is I'm forgetting World Cup players.
Big time Gauchos legend Tony Lockhead. Pretty good life. At least Wikipedia says he married 2008 Miss Universe New Zealand contestant. So played in the World Cup. Doing decently well for himself out here.
I felt bad for a second.
How about New Zealand? Current New Zealanders in MLS right now. Could you name the 2?
Ooh, this is good MLS trivia.
Yeah, there's 2 active New Zealanders. Boxall's 1. Boxall is 1.
And
Tuiloma's. Dang, Sasha, just like back in the COVID days.
He scored twice today, didn't he?
I missed it. As a big Solomon Islands guy, I just couldn't bear to watch. Just couldn't stand it. Couldn't do it. Oh man. Boy, this is where it went. We got people doing clown emojis in the comments. The Mexico fans throwing up Mexico flags on us right now. The chat swole to
Mexico,
we added a couple hundred people, which tells you sort of the way that USMNT fandom is. More people are here for the consternation, tough moments, and the hate than they are for just a ho hum 0-0 qualification for the World Cup.
That's the whole internet, isn't it, dude?
That's true. That's true. Although they are here for the New Zealand trivia, I must say.
Sash, how's your brother doing, by the way?
He's good, man. He's LA Galaxy bigwig.
I love it.
Yeah, he's great.
Speaking of Orange County Blue
Yeah.
Star legends,
He actually took my kids to soccer practice tonight so I could do this.
oh,
Nice. My
There you
brother's
go.
upstairs watching my kids. This is just
Nice.
this is
Look
perfect.
at that.
He's got to lean on family, man. That's what's up. Anders, I had that comment sent to you earlier that was about what's coming next for Sacha. We're not trying to retire you here, Sacha, but we had a comment about like, you know, what do you see for yourself after playing?
Last year I took my B license for coaching. So that was my start into the foray of the coaching world. And I worked with the U13, U14 LA Galaxy Academy team. So I'm pretty sure it's coaching. I do enjoy doing the TV stuff too. So I guess I'd say I'm not fully 100% in yet, because obviously I have like 4 more years on the field, guys. So
Nice.
take it easy, you know.
I love it.
But that's where I'm at right now.
I don't know if you guys saw this, but do you guys remember Sasha's interview post game? Yeah, it was so good. Where he talked about coaching. Was it coaching the kids the day before or the day of?
It was that day. It was
that
actually
day.
I had to do this assignment for my coaching course, which was coaching in a game, and the Galaxy Academy teams with their schedule and our schedule just wasn't really working out. And the one game that I could coach was on the same day as our game, which I really didn't want to do. And I had to ask like Greg Vanny permission to be like, hey, you mind if I stand out in the sun for 2 hours and coach these kids at 10 a.m. and then go home and rest and come back
What
to
did
our
he say?
game?
What did he say?
He was totally cool about it. He's been very supportive of me doing the whole coaching course last year and was
That's
very
great.
open and very collaborative with me. And it just so happened that I could just see these kids that day, just like, you know, the kids who weren't starting. Some of these kids' parents put so much pressure on them, like once they get into the Galaxy Academy, because it's such a big opportunity and they all just want to play. And, you know, I just had to try to give them a little pep talk, the guys who weren't starting. And then fortunately, I was able to come off the bench that night and help make the difference and really, you know, come through on my word for these guys. So that was pretty fun, pretty rewarding experience.
Dude, I feel like Sacha, you've been like between that and then the game against Charlotte with Chris. Like, I feel like you've been threading the needle between like coaching, media, finding the best stories in MLS, like scoring
that was
goals,
crazy.
getting assists, like just doing the whole thing. And I mean, I know it just comes from a place of just like who you are and the way that you like, which is the best part of it, is just like, I think you even said like, you know, just kind of like the moral of the story is just like be a good person. And so like, I think to see, you know, just to like see your success on the field and be able to contribute to like our league in such a big way still is, and like so many people around it, from like players that have come up growing up watching you and playing together. Like it's such an amazing thing to see. So just want to give you your flowers on while we're on air as well too.
Thanks, dude. I appreciate it. That's very kind of you to say.
Now that we got your flowers, we have some requests in the chat to get back on the game right now. Do you think the question is, do you think guys will make a decent U.S. will play well at the World Cup? Like, I know this game is not bigger than anything else. Also, Keylor Navas just went off, which is I don't know. He doesn't look like he's having too much trouble here, but that's a worrying sign. If you're Costa Rica, you obviously need to have him for the playoff. You need to have him for the World Cup if you are able to get there. Does this game portend anything bigger other than the goalkeeper situation for you, Doyle, about what we have to come? Because we're not going to lose by 6 here, I don't think. I mean, I'm going to knock on wood. I don't think Costa Rica is about to bang.
Wow,
4.
Wiebe. Wow. Just as
If
it
they
made
do,
3-0. It's 3-0. It's 3-0
No,
Costa Rica
don't even,
now.
Don't even.
Well, Wiebe, you had to open your mouth and look what happened.
No, I don't believe you.
Are you messing with us, Doyle? Or are you being?
Yeah,
we're in a full-on
I'm messing
Keylor
with
Navas
Andrew.
appreciation with the U.S.
Okay.
with a throw in the attacking third. So I know Doyle. I didn't believe that for a second.
Yeah. What was your question, Wiebe? You asked like 12.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying. Does this mean anything? Do you have any concerns coming off this game that are bigger than just where was our focus, where were our legs?
Look, I think Berhalter's done a really good job of dropping guys when they need to be dropped. We talked about it before with Leggett, Sargent, Brooks. He's got to drop Zach Steffen. Like Zach Steffen has repeatedly cost the U.S. points in qualifying. And this is not all on him tonight, but he certainly could have done better on the first goal. And he was straight up at fault for the second goal. And like that is my main concern with this team, is that Zach Steffen appears to be undroppable, even when he doesn't play at all for his club team. And then he doesn't play well for the U.S. And then my secondary concern beyond that is that Matt Turner's not going to be playing either. Like he's going to be getting FA Cup or Carabao Cup or, and that's it for Arsenal. I would rather have our number one keeper starting for a lesser club in a lesser league than riding pine for a Champions League club in the EPL. I know it's not as good for their bank accounts.
Well, hold on, time out. I don't know if Arsenal is a Champions League club. Are they?
I think they're top 4.
Are they?
Like third, I think. Yeah, I think they've had a really good season. So like it's reinforced what has been a long simmering worry of mine, specifically with regards to Zach Steffen. But now, or I should say in July when Turner goes there, with him as well. Sorry to be a buzzkill.
No, I mean, this game's a buzzkill. It's a bummer, man. It's not out of the ordinary in World Cup qualifying at all. We know that. This will make it 11 wins and two draws for Costa Rica at home against the U.S. And you can see what it means to them. Whenever they pan to the crowd, it is a veritable party in San Jose, pura vida, so to speak. What would you be thinking about coming off this game? You're doing the coaching thing now, Sacha. You're thinking ahead to that. If you're Greg coming off this game, what are you thinking?
I don't know if I would take a lot from this game. There's tired legs. The whole goal of the game is not to lose 6-0. You're trying to get into the World Cup. I would try to keep things positive with the guys that, look, we accomplished our first step and we've made it to the World Cup. So now we regroup, we get ready for the summer and the fall. I'm very interested to see what will happen in the summer and the fall if Turner gets healthy again, and does he give them each some game time, in the lead-up games before the World Cup? Do they each get game time? Does he then decide who's in better form at the moment, or does he stick with Steffen? That's really the big question mark. I think a lot of other players that have played a lot through qualifying, if they're healthy come World Cup time, they're pretty much penned in already, and there's just a few question marks. But the goalkeeper thing is becoming a question mark, or if it hasn't been already.
If I'm going to take the positive slant, I would say the goalkeeper question mark feels like a bit like I feel like we have some depth there that somebody hopefully will take their place. It is concerning with the and it's also kind of a factor of what I talked about earlier, is like the perception of American players and the exposure and experience of players to get to these guys' bigger clubs, and that can be great if you get in, and it can also make it a little difficult when you don't. But the thing is like, I don't blame Turner for taking this chance at all, because one, if Arsenal comes, you're going to take that 100 times out of 100. But then also like the fact that he was playing and killing it in MLS wasn't necessarily getting him in over Steffen either. So it's like you kind of got to take that chance. But it's like I still feel like I feel good about both options. I think Steffen, part of the reason why he's continues to be get his place over Turner is, I think, based on the way Greg wants to play with the ball, and I think like with his feet and the way he's able to kind of like distribute, and I think also even like the way he's able to come off his line at times. When he's in form, I think Steffen has like the qualities that take it to another level, but at the same time, like I think this competition is interesting. It's going to be one that I think might continue to follow, but I do think that Greg, like back to our earlier conversation of like who's Sacha's pick for the number 9 and who's Greg's pick for the 9. I think Greg's pick for the goalkeeper spot is still clearly Stefan. So I think it will take something to get him out of that spot. I'm not sure what that is, but I would expect to see that. I don't think it's as big of a controversy necessarily as people would talk about it, because I think it just comes down to a goalkeeper and like the preference of the manager at this point. And I'm still more concerned about the number 9. Like that's still the position. I still feel good about at least people like the fact that we have like a Man City and Arsenal goalkeeper like pressing each other to see who's going to be the starting goalkeeper is like ultimately a good problem. It's complicated, but I think it's a good problem to have, where I'm more concerned about like who's going to fit with Christian, who's going to fit into the system with as the number 9. I'm still hopeful that someone's going to emerge and like grab it, but I haven't seen it yet.
Speaking of number 9,
like
Kyle
one
Larin,
friendly.
Kyle Larin just equalized for Canada. Wiebe, does a draw get Canada into pot 3?
I don't think so. I think it has to be a win.
Okay, so it's 1-1 in the 81st minute.
That also, by the way, for Kyle Larin means that I believe he is tied atop the worldwide
No way.
FIFA World Cup qualifying Golden Boot rankings. I think if he scores one more, he would be alone.
That puts him on like 14, right?
Yeah, he's had a crazy productive.
14 overall, and I think 7 in 8 starts now in the Ocho, which is just like he's been amazing.
I get so like envious when I talk about the 9 situation looking at Canada.
Yeah, I mean you could go down to like 5 or 6.
I'm wearing my Jonathan David hat, limited edition hat, by the way, on the back right now. You can see it. But yeah, they've got a lot of firepower going forward. It's fun to watch.
We have a question in here. What's a successful but realistic World Cup run for the U.S.? I know we're looking forward a ton, but really that's what this is about. That's what this game is about getting there. And then, inevitably the draw happens Friday. And by the way, there's a live stream for that. DeMarcus Beasley will be with us. Susanna Collins hosting. Calen, Matt, I believe you guys are both back for that one on Friday. 11:30 a.m. Eastern is when we're going to start. We believe the draw is at noon. We don't know that. It's a little bit of a state secret, seemingly, about when exactly that will start to go down and actually happen. So tune in for that one. We'll get stories out of DeMarcus and figure out where the U.S. and Canada and every team in CONCACAF and every MLSer around the globe is going to be. It looks like we're in VAR right now, by the way, for that Panama-Canada goal. I've got a light over it. I can't tell. They got to be looking at offside, I would think, Doyle.
They called offside after VAR.
Oh,
barely. It was very close.
So Canada, unless they find
the
2
referee
goals
there, huh?
here, unless they find 2 goals here, they're in pot 4. Oh boy, there's some
not a good night right now for Panama and the United States. All right, let's get, what's the realistic run? Like what should we be thinking about as we see that draw? What should we be hoping for? What is this team capable of? And let's try to remove some of the downer vibes that we have inevitably accumulated in a 2-0 scoreline.
I'll be actively disappointed. I'll be actively disappointed if this team doesn't get out of the group, no matter what the group is, no matter who the U.S. is drawn with. I will be disappointed if they don't get out of the group.
I completely agree. Given the level of talent, the club experiences that they have, I think given the pot that they'll be in and the matchups that they can get off of that pot, I know the FIFA rankings mean a whole lot of nothing sometimes, but that ought to be the expectation. If we're talking about this team, this group, our game in this country moving forward, that we should not be thinking about playing 3 games and going home. I don't think there is any sort of like, oh, well, we failed last time, happy to get there this time. Like, sure, we're happy because we biffed it so hard last time that we robbed ourselves of 4 years of momentum and, invaluable experience for some of these players and also examples for others to follow and inspiration for kids. And forget kids, for all of us that love this game and all the opportunities that come off an appearance like that. I'm completely with you, Doyle. If you're not getting to the round of 16, I think that's a failure.
I'll agree with that. And I would say, like, it's interesting because I think there's been a lot of weight on this team for a while to I think, to go back to Sacha, talk about the redemption team,
the redemption team. Come on, it was way catchier than that.
No, it's the redeem team.
Redeem team. Respect.
I think I screwed it up last time and nobody called me on it. And then I tried to call you on it, so now I feel like an idiot.
I think like there'll be I think that was around the qualification, and what I hope happens is that when they get there, we see them playing a little bit more free. There's still going to be pressure, no doubt, right? Like that's just comes with the stage. But I think this team will set high expectations for themselves, and I hope go at it and take on. I think getting outside the group could be big, and I also think there's a potential for them to go further, especially when you look at like World Cups and sometimes with like young teams, especially. I think teams that have a lot of younger players can actually kind of like use that in a short tournament format and use that to kind of like push on. This is a little bit different of a year with the like timing of the tournament compared to other ones as well. So that'll be like an interesting thing to like think about. I'm not quite sure how that weighs out for us. But yeah, I agree. I think this team has a lot into it. And then it's like the other thing I would just sort of like, I'm just reflecting on as we hit the 90th minute right now is just like the like pain again of missing out. And like, this feels sort of cathartic of just like, I know this game hasn't gone the way we wanted to, but like the fact that we're going to the World Cup is something to be celebrated. And like this group, especially, and Greg and the whole like system and process to get here, like hasn't been perfect by any means, but I would say like this window has been a big success. And the fact that we're going to the World Cup again and thinking about like what 2026 might mean, like that ceiling doesn't exist if like 2022 isn't built upon. And so I think there's like a lot to be excited about right now as well.
I mean, this is going to sound funny, and the chat will probably murder me for this. I feel a little bit bad, not just for the supporters and the fan base and everything else, because we're not getting that cathartic moment necessarily. Like, we know we're going to the World Cup, but it's hard to feel and express those emotions when you're watching this, when you're participating in this, when you're sitting on a bench in Costa Rica, getting a 2-0 stuff down your throat. Like they had the banner out at the last game. Like I feel a little bit bad for these players and these coaches and the guys that accomplished this to not have that moment, to not have the moment that we saw. And I remember so vividly in Columbus against Mexico, of those guys, cracking beers and celebrating and doing it after beating Mexico and doing it after having a performance that they could be proud of. That's a bummer for me. I wish we would have got one of those goals. I wish Pulisic or Jordy Pefok would have scored in Mexico. Just so in Orlando they could have had that. Because right now it's a bummer. It sucks. Like I don't feel great. Like I'm not ready to like run upstairs and crack a bottle and get after it. Like, but after what I felt the last time around, it would have felt really good to have that moment. Like we're going to the World Cup. That's the context. It's hard right now to sort of like wrap your head around. We're going to the World Cup. We did the thing we set out to do. It's just that the exclamation mark goes to Costa Rica, who, by the way, have taken 19 out of 21 points after it looked like they were basically buried, after it looked like they didn't have a chance in this thing. And most of their supporters were just taking a giant dump on them. Like if you listened to the narrative around that team into last year, they were cooked. They were done. They needed to fire the coach. They had no chance. And then they went out in the biggest games of their lives and took 19 to 21 points. That's pretty impressive. And there's the final whistle right there. Costa Rica 2, U.S. 0. It would have taken a 6-0 for the U.S. to not automatically qualify for the World Cup, but we are going. We're going to do a quick post-game show, and then we're going to dump our thoughts into extra time. So we'll do like, I don't know, a couple of minutes here. Get a thought from each of you guys. Sasha, we're going to the World Cup, man. We lost 2-0.
I'm excited.
We lost 2-0 in Costa Rica, but we're going to the World Cup. Like I am excited. You have to sort of get your mind refocused after watching that for 90 minutes on a bigger picture, and it's easy to get down. But we're going to the World Cup. That's what matters. Last time around, we were screaming, "What are we doing?" We were crying at a bar. Like I was catatonic. This sucks, but it doesn't suck at all.
This doesn't suck at all. We've qualified for the World Cup. It doesn't matter if you come first, second, or third. We're going to the World Cup. This is a positive for our group, for our team. I hope Greg reiterates that to the team in the locker room. I hope they have some beers in the locker room, take some photos of as a group. Like, they deserve this. They went through a grueling process. They had to play a lot of games. They had to play tough games, and they got the results that mattered, that got them to the World Cup. That is an accomplishment. So anytime you qualify for the World Cup, it's a great thing. And I'm excited for our group to see how they do in Qatar. Can't wait for the draw on Friday.
Yeah. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be a lot of waiting, and then it'll be rapid fire, learning your fate. Who are you going to scout? Who are you going to be thinking about for the next 6 months? Who are we going to get obsessed with? Players, teams, coaches, styles, fan bases, everything. Doyle, thoughts?
I remember the U.S. losing the final game of the group stage in 2014 and advancing to the knockout round. I remember the U.S. losing the final game of the group stage in 2002 and advancing to the knockout round in like the most dramatic fashion possible, as Park Ji-sung scored a late goal that knocked Portugal out and put the U.S. in. That ruled. Both of those. It was great. U.S. lost. It was still awesome. I don't care about tonight. Like tonight for a young team, this is a good reminder of the energy you got to play with and the intensity you got to bring to every single one of these games that matter. In the way that Costa Rica did. Costa Rica took 19 of their final 21 points.
That's incredible. It's truly
absolutely
truly
amazing. I was kind of half not paying attention, so I don't know what question you asked, Wiebe, but like I don't care. Like the U.S. Took a digger tonight. For a team this young, I think it's a good lesson. And they're going to the World Cup, and this rules. It feels so good after what happened 4 years ago, and I can't wait to see what these guys can do in Qatar.
Calen, finish this off, man.
No, I just think like qualifying through this whole region is very difficult, right? And I think last cycle taught us a really painful lesson. So to come through and like have to be like, oh, well, we didn't win our last game ahead of the World Cup, like by 6 months.
And it's also not our last game. We're going to play a ton of games against very good competition.
I'm saying,
in friendly matches. Like this won't be the last taste.
Yeah, and this team is like, that's the thing I was saying about this team is like it's still there. A lot of the questions I've had have been answered for me. As far as like the most important one for me was kind of like, was there enough time for a team this young to come together so quickly? And we talked about the last year, going back to the beginning of this and being like, did we manage the situation completely right? And is there enough time for like this group to come together? And like, they have come together faster than I think a lot of people would have expected, myself included, and have like a real identity. I think we have answers on a lot of like the core of the team. There's a couple outstanding questions or competition still available, but that's like the way it's supposed to be. So I think and then the other thing is just like reflecting on like back to that, this is like not to be taken for granted. I'm just seeing like Christian now being interviewed by Jenny Chu on CBS on the sideline, and it's like I remember Christian's emotion in Cuba and Trinidad and missing out on that and what that meant to him personally. You could see on his face, and so many different people involved, like all of us, like not even just players, and what it meant for like our industry or media or jobs. Like there was like a major fallout, right? And so to see like I'm excited for Christian, because he's done it on the club level, but you can see what it means for him to play for his country. I'm so hyped to see him. I see Tim Way in the background, like all these guys, to think of like the same feeling I had for these Canadian guys when they qualified, of like they're going to get to play on the world's biggest stage. That's amazing. And we get to watch that. So I'm like I'm turning, like, once that whistle blew, I'm turning the corner from like, hey, not the best match, whatever, but like credit to Costa Rica too, because they are like fighting for everything they have too, and in great form. So I'm ready to celebrate. I'm ready to pour up a drink and enjoy it, because like we've had some drinks of sorrow in the past, all of us, right? Like over the last time we've done in the studio or outside of it, remote, whatever it is. And so I think this is a good chance to kind of like take a minute and say, wow, like we're going to be there. And that's like, and then like get a little greedy, and see what this team can do beyond that.
Yeah, I think we're going to end it there, guys. U.S. are going to the World Cup. Canada going to the World Cup. It wasn't an ideal match for day 14 for them in CONCACAF, but that's the beauty of getting it done 13 match days in, is that you can afford to lose 2-0 in Costa Rica, which is a pretty predictable result if you're looking at all the results of the past. I know there was some context here as far as yellow cards, but forget the context other than the U.S. are going to the World Cup. Get your mind right. Get prepared for the draw on Friday. Get prepared for November. That is a long way away. So any worries you have tonight, there is time to resolve those. DeMarcus Beasley will be with us on Friday. Susanna Collins hosting the group stage draw for the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. Canada, the U.S., Mexico, all automatically qualifying out of CONCACAF. Costa Rica, 19 of 21 points. We just have to keep saying it because it truly is incredible. Going to the one-game playoff against New Zealand. So, yeah.
Against Bill Tuiloma's New Zealand. Put some respect on that man's name.
Bill Tuiloma's New Zealand. Exactly. All right, everybody in the chat, thanks for being with us tonight. We're going to keep doing these, by the way. We will do these for every single U.S. and Canada game, I believe, all the way through the World Cup. So we'll see you many times over. And to you, we say good night. Go pour yourself a drink if you're a USA fan, Canada fan. It's better than it seems. You're going to the World Cup. Have a great night, everybody.